Chapter 2052. Ling Xian had been sent flying by Luo Shui's punch. However, after flying for 5 kilometers, his body turned into a shadow and strangely disappeared. Luo Shui was about to use his God's eye to search for Ling Xian's true body. At that moment, Ma Tuo pounced over, wielding a dark red millstone axe in both hands as he swung it down. Sacred demon punishing God. Ma Tuo's entire body surged with blood-red flames, and the simple millstone axe in his hands exuded a divine might that could destroy everything. Such ferocious might was enough to make any martial saint tremble in fear. Aside from martial gods, almost no one could withstand it. After all, the dark red ancient axe in Ma Tuo's hands did not have a simple origin. This axe was called the Heaven's Destroyer, and it was the personal weapon of a demon god from ancient times. That demon god had been a fierce general under the ancestor demon god, and his battle achievements were splendid. He was infamous for his ferocity, and he had killed over 100 gods from various races. The Heaven's Destroyer was even more dangerous, and it was difficult to resist. However, during the ancient War of the Gods, that demon god had been killed by the human race's war god, and he had fallen forever. The Heaven's Destroyer had also been shattered, leaving behind a few cracks that had been left behind on Shenwu continent. The demon axe had been hidden in the abyss for 10,000 years before it finally saw the light of day again, and it had been obtained by a demonic Dao powerhouse. After more than 20,000 years, it had finally landed in Dark North Mountain. 1,000 years ago, Ma Tuo had become the third great demon saint of Dark North Mountain, and he had obtained the Heaven's Destroyer. Although the Heaven's Destroyer had been severely damaged, it could only be considered a top-tier sacred weapon. However, it had once been a divine weapon, and it had possessed a terrifying might. Ma Tuo was reluctant to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. At this moment, Ma Tuo was relying on the burning blood deification technique to swing the Heaven's Destroyer at Luo Shui's clone. He was full of confidence, and he thought that he could force Luo Shui's clone to retreat or even injure her. However, his knowledge was too shallow, and he could not guess how terrifying a martial god powerhouse was. Chaotic explosion. Luo Shui's clone did not use any weapons. Instead, she used her slender hands to continuously wave dazzling light as she used a powerful divine art. Instantly, the sky in a radius of 5 kilometers in front of her twisted and folded, like a crumpled ball of paper. At least 4 layers of space were crushed and kneaded together, forming a light sphere that was 10 miles in radius, and then smashed towards Ma Tuo. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the randomly folded space bomb hit Ma Tuo. Hei Tuo was sent flying backward on the spot. The heaven-slicing war axe also collapsed high into the sky and fell down powerlessly. Not only that, the chaotic and folded power of space was like a sharp blade strangling Ma Tuo. He was strangled until his entire body was dripping with blood and riddled with wounds. He let out a painful shriek. Luo Shui's clone took the opportunity to close in, wanting to kill Ma Tuo in one fell swoop. But at this time, the great demon Saint Ling Xian had already gathered his strength and was ready to attack, using a secret technique to attack. Shadow Strike. Following his cold shout, 36 shadows appeared in the sky around Luo Shui, all of them charging towards Luo Shui at the same time. Each shadow was hundreds of meters tall and looked exactly like Ling Xian. Their soul aura and demonic energy fluctuations were also exactly the same. If it were any other martial sage, they would not be able to tell which figure was real and which was fake. But Luo Shui was different. She furrowed her brows, and her pitch-black eyes instantly turned dark gold. It was the Divine Eye's secret technique. The 36 shadows changed their appearance in her eyes, their disguises immediately torn off. Humph. You do have some skill. You actually have 12 real bodies and 24 illusions. Generally speaking, a secret technique like the shadow strike was a smokescreen. Most of the shadows were fake. Only one shadow was real. But Ling Xian's talent was extraordinary, and he actually had 12 real bodies. This was truly rare in the world. Luo Shui was not careless. She repeatedly waved her palms and flicked her fingers, shooting out hundreds of starlight swords. Swish! 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 The hundreds of silver starlight swords carried the power to pierce through everything as they ruthlessly stabbed towards the 12 real bodies. As for the 24 illusions, Luo Shui completely ignored them. Seeing this scene, Ling Xian instantly turned pale with fright. His heart was filled with shock and horror. He simply could not believe that Luo Shui could see through his shadow strike in an instant. In his vigilance, he hurriedly withdrew his hand, wanting to dodge the attack. But it was too late to retreat. Bang! 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 The hundreds of starlight swords pierced the 10 real bodies. A series of muffled sounds rang out as blood and fire splattered all over the sky. Only 2 of the real bodies managed to retreat in time and luckily escape this calamity. Even so, Ling Xian was still sent flying 30 li away, his body covered in blood as he smashed into the ruins. His and Batuo's injuries were even more severe, and they looked even more miserable. But the 2 of them gritted their teeth and desperately held on. The 2 of them consecutively used several sage artifacts and various secret techniques to entangle with Luo Shui. Rumble! Loud explosions rang out continuously in the sky, reverberating endlessly. Various colors of magical power, splendor, blood and fire enveloped hundreds of li of heaven and earth. It was extremely chaotic. This battle lasted for a full hour, and it still didn't end. Of course, Luo Shui's clone still had the upper hand despite fighting 2 enemies alone. Even if she was only a clone and only had 20% of the original strength. But she was the clone of the martial god. She was proficient in various divine arts and secret techniques. Her rich battle experience and deep understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth were far beyond the 2 great demon saints. The 2 of them exchanged thousands of blows, and she rarely suffered any setbacks. She was able to counter and neutralize the various secret techniques of the 2 great demon saints. And the divine Tao secret techniques she used were often able to beat the 2 great demon saints until they were covered in wounds and suffering unbearable pain. Ba Tuo was the weakest, and his injuries were also the most severe. At the end of the battle, he was the first to give up. His body collapsed on the spot, turning into a bloody mist. Only a dark purple soul was left, floating in the sky, fleeing towards the divine mountain in a panic. Great Demon Saint! Forgive me for not being able to accompany you any longer. We are not this crazy woman's match at all. I can only ask the progenitor to come out of seclusion. Ba Tuo transmitted his voice to the great demon saint as he fled towards the beaming palace at the peak of the divine mountain. The great demon saint's injuries were also very severe. His body was already distorted, like a mess of meat, and could collapse at any time. But he was using the shadow race's secret technique to support himself, trying his best to prevent his body from being destroyed. He still wanted to entangle Luo Shui's clone. Luo Shui Heavenly Divine Tao. Heavenly Sword. At this moment, Luo Shui's clone waved her hands and made a hand seal, using her Divine Tao secret technique, Luo Shui Heavenly Divine Tao. A holy giant sword that was thousands of feet tall and glowing with blue light fell from the sky. Nothing in the world could hide its sharpness or stop its power. The terrifying sword intent was enough to destroy everything. Bam! The great demon saint did not even have the chance to dodge. He was hit by the heavenly sword, and his body exploded into a bloody mist that scattered in all directions. Chapter 2053. That strange divine soul was the great demon saint's divine soul. Luo Shui's eyes were sharp as he stared at the lump of spirit, as he coldly shouted. Ling Xian. Today is the day of your death. Don't even think about escaping. Pay with your life for Luo Li. With a cold shout, Luo Shui raised his foot and crossed 50 miles in a single step, catching up to the great devil saint's soul. Sword of Heaven's Wrath. She raised her right hand and used the Luo Shui's heavenly god Dao to summon the power of the stars and slashed out. A giant silver star sword that was thousands of feet tall slashed down from the sky and went straight for the great demon saint's divine soul. Before the giant sword arrived, the great demon saint's divine soul was locked down and had nowhere to run. In the next moment, his divine soul was about to be hit by the giant sword and die on the spot. However, at this critical moment, a blood-red dragon that was thousands of feet long flew out from behind the sacred mountain. Roar! The ferocious blood-red dragon raised its head and let out a dragon roar that was filled with murderous intent. It rushed into the sky as fast as an aurora to meet the starry giant sword head-on. Bang! With a deafening sound, the blood-red dragon collided with the giant star sword. Both of them collapsed at the same time and exploded into fragments that covered the sky. The blood-red fragments were like flames and the silver fragments were like starlight. The dark sky within a few hundred miles was illuminated in a dazzling light. A violent shockwave swept across the surrounding 1,000 miles of the sacred mountain and stirred up a hurricane. The towering sacred mountain that was thousands of feet tall was also shaken by the shockwave and let out a loud rumbling sound. The great demon saint and Matuo's divine souls were swept up by the shockwave and smashed into the sacred mountain. Their divine souls were hit and their consciousness became blurry. However, they were already overjoyed to be able to escape from Luo Shui's sword. Primogenitor. Primogenitor saved me. This is great. Primogenitor has finally come out of seclusion. We're saved. The two divine souls floated in the sky above the sacred mountain and looked at the dark sky behind the mountain as they shouted excitedly. Luo Shui also temporarily stopped his pursuit. He stood in the sky with a cold expression, frowning as he looked at the peak of the divine mountain. Ancestral devil god. Was it going to come out of seclusion? I wonder what realm this demon has recovered to. In the next moment, the dark sky behind the sacred mountain suddenly lit up with a bloody light. A gigantic figure slowly rose from the darkness. Boom! Roar! As that incomparably huge figure continued to rise into the sky, a series of loud noises could be heard from behind the divine mountain. All of a sudden, boundless demonic chi erupted, covering a radius of a few thousand miles. This expanse of the heavens and the earth had become pitch black, and it had completely turned into a ghastly and terrifying ghost town. Sensing the powerful aura, Luo Shui stared at the towering figure as a tinge of fear flashed across his eyes. That incomparably huge figure was over 10,000 meters tall. It was as majestic as a sacred mountain. Its entire body was black and red, and its body was towering and sturdy like an old bear. It also looked like a pitch-black bull demon. Its broad body was like a huge mountain, and its 3 heads reached into the dark clouds, revealing 6 pairs of demonic eyes that flickered with purple light. It had 6 pairs of blade-like wings on its back. They were half black and half red, and they were surrounded by demonic chi. 4 thick and sturdy mountain-like arms seemed to be able to break through the stars. This was the ancestral devil god's body. However, Luo Shui could vaguely sense that this was not the ancestral devil god's original appearance. She felt that something was amiss. The ancestral devil god seemed to have mastered some kind of secret technique, and its power was in an extremely violent state, and it could erupt at any time. At this moment, the ancestral devil god looked down at Luo Shui's clone and spoke with a booming voice. This god has been silent for too long. The people of the world have already forgotten the name, Death God, and have abandoned fear and reverence. Now, even a mere Valkyrie dares to barge into the northern underworld mountain and make an enemy out of this god. Furthermore, this is not the Valkyrie's true body, but just a clone. You are looking down on this god. The ancestral devil god's voice was deep and vigorous, as if he was talking to himself. However, it contained a formless power that directly attacked one's soul. As he spoke, the sky and earth within a radius of a few thousand miles undulated along with his aura. Clearly, he had already merged with the heavens and earth within a few thousand miles. Luo Shui's clone stared at him coldly, and said in an icy tone, "Ancestral devil god? Death god? A demon that fell 30,000 years ago. It is already a great fortune that you can be reborn today. If I were you, I would find a place to hibernate, and focus on recovering my strength. I would definitely not send out an army to start a war before I have recovered my strength, and bring about a fatal disaster." Hearing this, the ancestral devil god's 6 demonic eyes flickered with a sharp, cold light as they stared at Luo Shui's clone. "Oh. Little girl, you know quite a lot about this god's past. You are the divine master of Luo Shui Divine Kingdom, Luo Shui Martial God. When Ji Tianqing was in Luo Shui Divine Kingdom, he received quite a bit of your protection, right?" Luo Shui's clone was unwilling to talk about this topic, and said in a sinister tone, "Devil God, you should feel lucky that only this god's clone has come today. If this god had come personally, you and Baiming Palace would have been annihilated. However, this god has come this time to avenge Luo Li. As long as you hand over the great demon saint's divine soul, I can let you live." The ancestral devil god sneered, and said in a mocking tone, "Ha ha 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 ha. You. Let this god off the hook. What a joke. 30,000 years ago, all the gods in the world trembled in fear when they heard this god's name. Little girl, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, you are truly arrogant and ignorant to the extreme. What kind of place do you think Baiming Mountain is? If you really had the ability, you would have flattened Baiming Mountain long ago. Why did you have to endure until now? Furthermore, this god has achieved great success in cultivating the heaven-piercing giant demon physique, and my vitality has recovered by more than half. Since you have taken the initiative to send yourself to death, this god will fulfill your wish." As his voice fell, the ancestral devil god waved his 4 mountain-like arms, and smashed out fist shadows that blotted out the sky towards Luo Shui's clone. Over 100 fist shadows were blood-red, dark purple, and pitch black. They contained a monstrous demonic power, and their might was terrifying. Luo Shui immediately sensed that the ancestral devil god's aura was several times stronger than the great demon saint's. It was already comparable to a true martial god expert. She did not dare to be careless, and with a solemn expression, she waved her palm to cast a spell. Her slender fingers scattered starlight that filled the sky, and welcomed the 100 fist shadows. The specks of silver light formed tens of thousands of starlight swords, forming a huge sword array. Bang 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 bang. The sword array and fist shadows fiercely collided, and an earth-shattering sound erupted, fiercely reverberating between heaven and earth. Very quickly, the starlight swords and fist shadows collapsed. After exchanging a move, both sides were evenly matched, and no one was able to gain an advantage. Chapter 2054. Massacre. The ancestor fiend celestial roared furiously as he waved his 4 gigantic palms, which blotted out the sky, towards the Luo Shui clone. The gigantic palms were like blades, emitting bloody and purple light. They were like blades that could cut open the sky, destroying everything. The ancestor fiend celestial's secret techniques all had simple names, but their power was extremely terrifying. This was because he was once the ancestor of the fiend celestial race that controlled the 5 elements world. His martial path had already reached perfection, and he had already abandoned his flashy techniques, reaching the realm of the great Tao is the most simple. The bloody blades from the 4 gigantic palms were enough to slaughter all living things. The Luo Shui clone did not dare to underestimate the enemy. He waved his 10 fingers, shooting out hundreds of icy blue water pillars. Virtuous like water, you can do anything you want. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Every water pillar was 5 kilometers long, like icy blue ribbons, as they danced in the sky. The hundreds of water pillars intertwined, forming a gigantic net that blotted out the sky, covering a radius of dozens of kilometers. The ancestor Fian Celestial's attack was extremely domineering and violent. As for the water-type divine power, it was extremely gentle and endless. The 4 gigantic palms that could split the sky and earth struck the icy blue net, creating a world-shaking sound as icy blue water splashed everywhere. The icy blue net was split open, and the 200 water pillars were severed, causing a torrential flood to fall. However, the ancestor Fian Celestial's attack was blocked by the icy blue net, losing all its power. No one could do anything to the other, and it was a tie again. The ancestor Fian Celestial roared furiously as he waved his 4 arms again, flapping his 6 pairs of wings, releasing an attack that blotted out the sky. Various spells condensed from bloody and purple light rained down, covering a radius of a few hundred kilometers. The world was in complete chaos, and nothing could be seen. Luo Shui could only defend with all her might, using various defensive techniques to neutralize the ancestor Fian Celestial's attack. She was a water-type martial god, and was known as the god of Luo Shui. Defense-type secret techniques and ultimate skills were her forte. In 2 hours, the ancestor Fian Celestial attacked with more than 3,000 moves, sparing no effort. However, Luo Shui blocked and neutralized 90% of the attacks. The remaining 10% of the spells that hit her did not cause too much damage, only slightly injuring her. Previously, I fought with Ling Xian and Ba Tuo for quite a long time, and used up a lot of my magic power. Now, the ancestor Fian Celestial is attacking with all his might. I can only defend and neutralize his attacks. Fierce attacks like this consumes a lot of his energy. I've already been fighting with it for half an hour. I believe that it won't be long before its strength is exhausted. At that time, I will have a chance to defeat it and kill Great Devil Saint Ling Xian. Luo Shui. As the Luo Shui clone fought Fian Celestial, she was the Fiend Celestial, and was the Fiend Celestial was the Fiend God. Now, Luo Fai. 2 hours passed. She exchanged another few thousand moves with the ancestral Fiend God, and the battle was extremely intense. The sky, the sky, and sun, and was the sun, and the sun, Louis. Everything within a radius of 800 miles around the sacred mountain had turned into scorched earth and ruins. The wastelands, craters, mountain ranges and peaks were all reduced to dust. Even half of the 10,000-meter-tall divine mountain had collapsed, and a great amount of earth and rocks had collapsed. If not for the ancestor Fian Celestial protecting the Loyalos, the 10,000-meter-tall peak would have been reduced to dust. After 2 hours of intense fighting, Luo Shui's clone's injuries were even more severe. Her body was covered in blood, and one of her arms had been cut off. Her strength was greatly weakened. On the other hand, the ancestor Fian Celestial was still full of power, and showed no signs of exhaustion. He had already gained the upper hand and was in complete control of the situation. He used a barrage of attacks to suppress Luo Shui's clone, preventing her from counterattacking or escaping. Luo Shui's clone realized that she was not the ancestor Fian Celestial's match. If she continued fighting, she would only die. After all, the ancestor Fian Celestial had recovered a lot of his strength, and he had the geographical advantage. If she left North Underworld Mountain, she might have a chance to fight the ancestor Fian Celestial for 3,000 rounds, and win. But now, the ancestor Fian Celestial was at the peak of the Loyalos, with the Blood Sea Abyss behind him, and his strength had greatly increased. With the Blood Sea Abyss providing him with power, he had an endless supply of it. In the Loyalos and the Blood Sea Abyss, the ancestor Fian Celestial was invincible. Unless Luo Shui martial god's true body came, there was no chance of victory. No, I can't continue fighting with the ancestor Fian Celestial, or I will die here. Although this is only my clone, it was forged from my soul and blood essence. It took me 9 years to complete, and I also used 6 divine-grade materials. However, I have come to avenge Luo Li. Even if I want to leave, I have to kill the great Fian Celestial Ling Xian first. Luo Shui's clone made up her mind. As she fought with the ancestor Fiend Celestial, she searched for Ling Xian's whereabouts. Soon, her divine sense found that Ling Xian's soul had hidden in North Underworld Palace. The North Underworld Palace at the peak of the mountain was extremely solemn and dignified, and it had even set up a powerful defensive sacred array. After exchanging 2 blows with the ancestor Fiend Celestial, Luo Shui's clone took the opportunity to escape from the ancestor Fiend Celestial's clutches, and rushed to the peak of the Loyalos. Whoosh! She turned into an icy blue stream of light and formed a huge sword, thrusting towards North Underworld Palace. Inside North Underworld Palace, Ling Xian was hiding in a heavily guarded secret room, treating his injuries with all his might. As the huge sword thrusted down, a formless icy aura enveloped the peak of the mountain. Ling Xian sensed it and knew that a calamity was about to befall him. He was immediately shocked and furious, and hurriedly burrowed into the ground, trying to hide. At the same time, the ancestor Fiend Celestial standing behind the Loyalos sneered in a mocking tone. Ha ha ha! Luo Shui, you have finally taken the bait. As he spoke, the ancestor Fiend Celestial quickly waved his 4 arms, sending out a blood light that covered the sky. Extermination of all life. Following the ancestor Fiend Celestial's cold shout, the dark sky around North Underworld Palace suddenly lit up with a soaring blood light. In the blink of an eye, a super-large array with a radius of 500 miles rapidly appeared. This light barrier that covered the sky was dark purple, and it flickered with hundreds of blood dragon shadows, as well as thousands of Asuras and evil demons phantoms. Kill! The ancestor Fiend Celestial waved his 4 arms and controlled the power of the large array, ruthlessly suppressing Luo Shui's clone. A formless power that could destroy the world attacked from all directions, immediately enveloping the huge icy blue sword. Ka-cha! With a crisp explosion, the huge icy blue sword crumbled on the spot, shattering into pieces that filled the sky. Luo Shui's clone appeared, covered in blood as she fell to the ground, heavily crashing into the square in front of North Underworld Palace. A deep pit was created in the square that was paved with solid black stones, with countless pieces of stone flying everywhere. Her body was bent over in the pit, as she tried her best to raise her head to look at the sky, dark red blood gushing out of her mouth and nose. Chapter 2055. Luo Shui's clone was already heavily injured. Now that she was imprisoned by the life extermination array, her injuries were even more severe and she was at the end of her tether. She glared at the ancestor Fiend Celestial, her eyes filled with hatred and killing intent. The ancestor Fiend Celestial looked down at her from above and sneered, "Luo Shui, don't blame me for being despicable. You are just too stupid and too impulsive. This sacred mountain is the sacred land of my clan, and Baiming Palace is my resting place. How can I not set up a powerful array? For 30,000 years, my clan has been living in seclusion in Baiming Mountain, recuperating. Even if the divine martial continent's various races and divine kingdoms change, it will not affect my clan. Do you know why? My clan has been living in seclusion, this is one of the reasons. But most importantly, it is because Baiming Mountain's terrain is treacherous and the environment is vile. Every step is filled with danger and danger. Especially around the sacred mountain and the sacred city, we have set up an inescapable net. Even a martial sage would have to return in defeat. The ancestor Fiend Celestial looked as if victory was already in his hands, his eyes filled with pride. He was not in a hurry to kill Luo Shui's clone, but said slowly, "Previously, you destroyed the sacred city and killed your way to the sacred mountain. You are truly awe-inspiring and invincible. I don't want to activate the sacred array. It can't stop you at all and will only be a waste of time. Only the divine array on the sacred mountain can trap you and kill you." There was no doubt that the great formation of annihilation was a genuine divine formation. And it was an ancient demonic array that had once killed the various races' divine spirits. When Luo Shui's clone heard this, she was even more enraged and her killing intent surged. She glared at the ancestor fiend celestial and said in a sinister tone, "No wonder you have been hiding on the sacred mountain and never showed yourself. It turns out that you are relying on the protection of the divine array and the power of the blood sea abyss to recover your vitality. But don't be too proud. I have already figured out Biming Mountain situation. Today, I have lost this clone. When my true body arrives, I will definitely flatten Biming Palace." After saying that, she slowly stood up and walked towards the sky with her back ramrod straight. Ancestral Devil God looked down at her and sneered, "That's right, you are the famous Luo Shui martial god. If you were here in your true form, I wouldn't be a match for you. However, in the next few decades, you won't come out of seclusion at all. Otherwise, your years of bitter cultivation will be wasted." In order to avenge his maid, not only did he have to destroy a clone, he even had to destroy hundreds of years of cultivation. What a joke. The Luo Shui clone said expressionlessly, "Cut the crap. Do you really think that you can easily kill me with this divine formation? How laughable. Your true strength is only at the peak of the martial sage realm. You are still far from the deity realm. Even if I have to abandon this clone today, I won't let you off easily." With that, the Luo Shui clone clasped his hands together in front of his chest and closed his eyes with a solemn expression. He began to circulate his magic power and use his final trump card. Star Fall. Her entire body lit up with an ice-blue brilliance that soared into the sky. She was burning with a fierce silver star fire, and her body swelled up violently. Without a doubt, the Luo water clone was about to self-destruct. The ancestral Fiend Celestial's expression immediately changed. His 6 eyes were filled with deep fear and wariness. He hurriedly waved his 6 arms and absorbed the power of the blood sea abyss. He frantically poured it into the divine formation, desperately suppressing the Luo Shui clone. He could only try to resist and neutralize it. He could not escape. Otherwise, the self-destruction of the Luo Shui clone would definitely destroy the entire Divine Mountain and Biming Palace. At the same time, the many demonic Dao experts in Biming Palace, as well as the souls of Ling Xian and Batua, all entered the divine artifact and fled the divine formation as if their lives depended on it. They all fled towards the blood sea abyss in a panic, seeking the protection of the ancestral Fiend Celestial. The next moment, the Luo Shui clone transformed into a resplendent full moon, releasing the most dazzling brilliance in the sky. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion shook the universe. The momentum was terrifying to the extreme. Endless star fire and ice-blue brilliance rose up like a mushroom cloud, illuminating the surrounding thousands of kilometers as if it was daytime. Even the divine formation of annihilation of the world could not withstand the terrifying might of the self-destruction. The massive barrier of light of the formation crumbled with cracking sounds, numerous cracks appearing on it. Within the formation, more than half of Biming Palace at the peak of the divine mountain had been destroyed. Many of the palaces, pavilions and walls had been reduced to rubble, leaving behind countless bricks and broken walls. The peak of the mountain was a mess. The entire divine mountain shook violently, several ravines appearing on it. It had almost collapsed. Several hundred demonic Dao experts that could not escape in time were all killed on the spot, blown to smithereens. Even the ancestral Fiend Celestial that controlled the divine formation swayed from the impact. Cracks appeared on his chest and neck, causing a rain of blood to rain down. The intense pain caused him to roar at the sky. He was so furious that he almost went mad. The self-destruction of the Luo Shui clone had destroyed the divine formation. The ancestral Fiend Celestial had used his heart's blood, demonic creatures and talismans to set up this divine formation. The divine formation was connected to his soul. Now that the divine formation had been destroyed, he obviously suffered a backlash. Not only was his body heavily injured, his soul was also severely damaged. After a long while, the earth-shaking explosions gradually dissipated. The dust and starlight that filled the world also gradually disappeared. Everything was over. The world calmed down. Everything within a radius of 1,000 miles had been reduced to rubble. It was a scene of devastation and dust. The divine mountain that was covered in cracks stood alone among the rubble. The peak of the divine mountain was also in ruins. The ground was a mess. The ancestral fiend celestial stood in the sky, looking down at this scene. He was furious and pained. Saint Devil City had been destroyed. Over 2 million demonic Tao citizens had been killed. Countless elite experts had been killed, even the divine mountain had been destroyed. More than half of Baiming Palace had been destroyed. Such heavy losses were a huge blow to the demonic Tao. It would take many years for them to recover their strength. After a long while, Ling Xian and Batuo's souls flew out of the blood sea abyss and landed beside the ancestral fiend celestial. The two of them had survived the calamity. They secretly rejoiced, but they still had lingering fears. Ancestral fiend celestial, this subordinate has failed. Ancestral fiend celestial, please punish me. Ancestral fiend celestial, this subordinate was unable to stop that crazy woman. The ancestral fiend celestial endured his injuries and said in a dignified tone, Luo Shui has personally sent her avatar for revenge. You are not her match. It is normal for you to be defeated. Fortunately, her avatar has been destroyed. Her main body will also be implicated. She will not come for revenge in the short term. Quickly gather the chiefs and leaders of the various large tribes and arrange for the rebuilding of the divine mountain and the reconstruction of the divine holy city. This god had a huge battle and has greatly damaged my vitality. I still need to recuperate for a few years. I cannot be disturbed. Ling Xian and Batuo's souls hurriedly complied. After hesitating for a while, Batuo carefully asked, Ancestral Fiend Celestial, this subordinate and great demon sage's bodies have been destroyed. I'm afraid it will take 100 years, the Ancestral Fiend Celestial said in a low voice, after you have arranged for the reconstruction, enter the blood sea abyss. This god will personally heal your injuries and help you recover your avatars. Our Divine Master caused a ruckus in the North Underworld Mountain. Of course I've heard about it. This news came from the North Underworld Mountain, and it has already spread throughout the 3 divine kingdoms, right? Exactly. The Divine Master only used an avatar to destroy the Saint Devil City and Sacred Mountain of the demon race. He even destroyed the Baiming Palace. This is shocking news. That's right. Who do you think our Divine Master is? Just by sending an avatar into North Underworld Mountain, the devil race will suffer heavy casualties and wails everywhere. If that happens, the war situation in the north will also be affected. The aggressive demons will definitely suffer great losses and their morale will plummet. Yes. The Divine Master's method is too satisfying. I'm just puzzled. Why doesn't the Divine Master personally enter the North Underworld Mountain? He would definitely be able to annihilate the entire demon race in one fell swoop. Sigh, I used to think so too, but the Lord God is a deity. How can we, mere mortals, guess her thoughts? The guards and maids were chatting enthusiastically and did not notice Ji Tianqing's approach. Until the golden dragon suddenly appeared and stared at everyone with a solemn expression. Only then did the few guards and maids hurriedly shut their mouths and disperse like birds and beasts. The golden dragon walked quickly to Ji Tianqing and bowed, subordinate greets young master. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, Golden Dragon, what happened? From what they said, it seems that the Luo Shui martial god sent an avatar to cause a ruckus in the North Underworld Mountain. The golden dragon did not dare to conceal anything and answered truthfully, Young master, that's right. After divine official Luo Li died, the Divine Master was very sad. In order to avenge divine official Luo, he sent an avatar into the North Underworld Mountain and started a massacre. Not only was the Saint Devil City destroyed, more than 2 million demons lost their lives, even the Sacred Mountain and Baiming Palace of the demon race were heavily damaged. It is said that the demon race lost countless elite experts and powerhouses. Even 2 great demon saints had their avatars destroyed and almost lost their lives. The golden dragon's words were very pertinent and did not exaggerate at all. Ji Tianqing frowned and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He nodded silently. Okay, I know. The golden dragon hurriedly bowed and changed the topic, asking, Young master, I heard from master that your heavenly tribulation is near. Why did you come out instead of cultivating in the secret room? Ji Tianqing smiled and said indifferently, the heavenly tribulation will descend today. Hearing this, the golden dragon's expression changed and he hurriedly bowed, please don't blame me, young master. I will go and prepare to clear the place. I wish young master a smooth heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said indifferently, no need to clear the place. If everyone wants to see me pass the heavenly tribulation, then let them. After saying this, he stepped out of the cloud water palace and walked toward the solitary cloud peak at the back of the mountain. The morning sun had just risen and the steep solitary cloud peak stood alone in the back of the mountain. Ji Tianqing walked through the buildings and palaces and crossed the square. He walked leisurely toward the solitary cloud peak, attracting the attention of countless people. Many disciples of the Luotian mountain were surprised and curious when they saw him suddenly appear. Seeing him go to the solitary cloud peak, everyone guessed something and hurriedly followed to see what was going on. Half an hour later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the solitary cloud peak. He sat cross-legged on the mountain peak and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing, merging with the heaven and earth. Gray clouds quickly gathered in the sky in all directions, and a violent hurricane started to blow. The wind and clouds met and the sky immediately darkened, blocking the morning sun. Such a change in heaven and earth naturally attracted the attention of countless people. When the disciples, guards, and maids saw the change in the sky, they immediately cried out in alarm. Heavens! The heavenly tribulation is about to descend. Which senior brother or senior sister is going through the heavenly tribulation? This heavenly anomaly is very unusual. I just heard that young Master Ji is back. He is on the solitary cloud peak. What? Eldest senior brother is back. He is going to pass the heavenly tribulation. Oh my God! It has only been 2.5 years since eldest senior brother went through the heavenly tribulation. He is going to go through the heavenly tribulation again. It's too scary. As expected of eldest senior brother. As expected of the number 1 genius of the kingdom of gods. What are you all waiting for? Let's go to the solitary cloud peak to see what is going on. Eldest senior brother and senior sister have always been benevolent and will not stop us. We can watch them go through the heavenly tribulation. In the various palaces of the Luotian mountain, similar discussions constantly sounded. Countless young disciples, guards, and maids rushed to the solitary cloud peak to watch Ji Tianqing go through the heavenly tribulation. At the same time, Ji Tianqing looked up at the pitch-black sky and looked at the tribulation cloud vortex with a deep gaze. He thought to himself, the first 8 bolts of heavenly tribulation were ordinary. I wonder what kind of test the 9th bolt of heavenly tribulation will be. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. These 2 hours seemed to be extremely long for everyone. Fortunately, the blood-red light finally dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure reappeared, and he woke up safely. Many disciples and guards revealed expressions of relief. However, before everyone could cheer for Ji Tianqing, the 8th tribulation of wind and fire descended. The heavenly wind and astral fire enveloped Ji Tianqing, burning his body violently. The mysterious pitch-black soul flame kept pouring into his mind, burning his sea of consciousness and divine soul. He was enduring great suffering and pain, but he still had to use the tribulation of wind and fire to temper his body and divine soul in pursuit of perfection. Even if his body was burned until it was distorted and his skin and flesh turned into black ash, he still clenched his teeth and did not make a sound. An hour later, the tribulation of wind and fire finally ended. Ji Tianqing's body had also recovered. After being strengthened, it had become even stronger. The vortex of tribulation clouds began to change again. It sped up and turned into a dark gold color. He finally welcomed the 9th bolt of heavenly lightning. This was the last bolt of heavenly lightning of the 9 stages of heavenly tribulation, and it was also the ultimate test. If he could successfully pass it, he would be completely reborn and transcend mortality. But if he could not pass it, he would die in the tribulation, and all his previous efforts would be in vain. Ji Tianqing's face became serious. He looked up at the sky with burning eyes, staring at the vortex of tribulation clouds. Before the heavenly lightning descended, the vortex of tribulation clouds emitted an invisible heavenly might that enveloped an area of 100 miles. The air froze. Heaven, earth, and space also came to a standstill. Ji Tianqing was suppressed. It was as if a pair of big hands were pressing him to the ground, and he could not move at all. He immediately frowned and muttered doubtfully, "There's actually such a powerful heavenly might. It seems that the power of this bolt of heavenly lightning is extremely terrifying." After about 10 breaths of time, a thunderous sound that shook the universe was heard. Kaboom! A dark gold bolt of heavenly lightning suddenly struck down from the vortex of tribulation clouds. That bolt of heavenly lightning was thousands of feet long and about 100 meters thick. It was like a huge golden dragon. The strange thing was that the dark gold lightning beam was mixed with thousands of wisps of white light. Not only was Ji Tianqing puzzled, but the surrounding disciples and guards were also confused and puzzled. No one had seen such a bolt of heavenly lightning before. They only found it novel and strange. Ji Tianqing also became vigilant. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and slashed at the golden bolt of heavenly lightning. Bang! The huge sword light collided with the bolt of heavenly lightning and exploded with a dull sound. The bolt of heavenly lightning was unscathed. It was not damaged at all. However, the huge sword light instantly collapsed. The sword of burial of heaven also trembled and buzzed. Ji Tianqing was hit by the impact. His feet sank into the rock layer. His body also trembled violently, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. In the next moment, the golden bolt of heavenly lightning struck him and drowned his figure. Swoosh! The golden bolt of heavenly lightning turned into a ball of light and tightly wrapped Ji Tianqing. It hung motionlessly in the sky. Ji Tianqing's consciousness gradually blurred. Soon, he fell into a strange illusion. This illusory realm was like a pitch-black and boundless void. He stood alone in the void. He could neither see the sky nor the ground, and there was nothing around him. However, he was not in a hurry and did not act rashly. He stopped in place and thought silently. In the previous 8 heavenly tribulations, I went through the 7 emotions, reincarnation, space-time, 5 elements, heaven and earth, yin and yang, stars, and karma. What kind of test is this 9th heavenly tribulation? With the experience of the previous 8 heavenly tribulations, he had long guessed that the test of each heavenly tribulation would be more and more difficult. The test of the 9th heavenly tribulation was definitely the most difficult and the most profound. As expected. When he casually took a step forward, 2 silver doors of light immediately appeared in the dark void in front of him. In the door of light on the left, the scene constantly changed. It showed him failing the heavenly tribulation, blood spurting out of his orifices, and his divine soul collapsing and dying. The scene in the door of light on the right was the scene of him successfully passing the heavenly tribulation, being baptized by divine power, and shining brightly. This is something that is about to happen. It concerns my future fate. Could this heavenly lightning test have something to do with my future and fate? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then he stepped into the door of light on the right. Swoosh! After crossing this door of light, he saw 4 more doors of light in the void in front of him. Chapter 2058. The images in the 4 light doors were different and represented different choices. Or rather, it indicated that he was about to take a different path. In the first light door, after he had successfully passed the tribulation, he had secluded himself in the Luotian mountain to cultivate and break through to the martial sage realm. However, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was divided internally and the top powers of the demon race took the opportunity to invade. In the end, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains fell apart and was destroyed. In the second light door, after he had successfully passed the tribulation, his strength had increased tremendously and he had confidently killed his way into the North Underworld mountain to fight the ancestor demon god. Originally, he had thought that after the Luo Shui clone had caused havoc in the North Underworld mountain, the North Underworld mountain would be greatly weakened and he would definitely succeed. In the end, he was still not the ancestor demon god's match and was cruelly killed. In the third light door, after he had successfully passed the tribulation, he had returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and worked hard to cultivate. After 10 years, he had finally broken through to the martial sage realm and the Pillar of Heaven's mountain's power had increased greatly. Then, he had gone to the North Underworld mountain to seek revenge but he had discovered that the North Underworld mountain had already recovered and the ancestor demon god had also broken through to the divine realm. He, Yin Yao and everyone in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had been easily killed. As for the fourth light door, it was messy and blurry. It was hard to grasp. Ji Tianqing carefully looked at the images in the 4 light doors and finally understood everything. Every light door is equivalent to a turning point in my fate. Once I make the wrong choice, my fate will change and I may even die. It seems that the ultimate test of the 9th tribulation is the choice of fate. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and a playful smile appeared on his face. Indeed. Fate is the most mysterious and unpredictable power in the world. Not to mention the martial sages and martial gods, even the supreme beings in the upper realm cannot truly control their own fate. However, I have never believed in fate. I only believe that everything depends on human effort. The so-called fate is controlled and created by oneself. If an ordinary person was faced with such a test, they would be at a loss and would not know what to do. They would either make the wrong choice in a muddle-headed state or be afraid to move forward. However, Ji Tianqing was different. He had once reached the peak of the martial way and controlled the people of the world. Even though he had not taken the final step and broken through the shackles of fate. However, his knowledge was more profound than the ocean, his wisdom was more resolute than the earth, and his ambition was greater than the starry sky. After being reborn, he absolutely did not believe in the arrangement of fate. If the heavens decided that he would die prematurely or fall midway, he would defy the heavens and change his fate. After a long time, Ji Tianqing collected his thoughts and made up his mind. Once I make a choice and step into a door of light, more doors of light will appear, leading to more choices and tests. If this goes on, I will face more and more unknown choices, and the situation will become more and more difficult. If he took a wrong step, his life would be in danger. If you take the right path, you will also fall into an endless cycle of choices, and you will not know when the end will be. He even thought of a question. No matter which path he chose, the end result would be death. As such, he wasn't willing to submit to fate's arrangements, nor did he want to step through the door of light and make a choice. He chose to rebel against the shackles of fate. He abruptly raised his right fist and unleashed the star-shattering fist with all his might, slamming it into one of the light gates. Boom! The huge golden fist hit the door of light with a loud bang, causing a deafening explosion. Instantly, the door of light trembled, and countless cracks appeared on it. Even the image in the door of light became blurry and gradually dissipated. Ji Tianqing did not stop, and once again, he slammed his palm into the door of light. Boom! The huge golden light blade slammed into the door of light with a loud bang. The door of light collapsed on the spot, shattering into countless silver light fragments and scattering in the void. After destroying one of the doors of light, Ji Tianqing continued to attack and destroyed the remaining 3 doors of light. When all 4 doors of light were destroyed, he returned to his previous position with a swoosh. He was still standing in the void, with 2 doors of light standing in front of him. One was to fail the tribulation and die miserably. The other was to succeed the tribulation and receive the heavenly axiom's reward. However, he did not choose any of the doors of light, and repeatedly used his ultimate sword techniques to shatter the 2 doors of light. Swoosh! When the 2 doors of light disappeared, he was also sent out of the dark void by an invisible force. In the next moment, he woke up from the illusion and opened his eyes. The dark golden brilliance that enveloped him had already dissipated. He stood on solitary cloud peak unscathed, and the cheers and shouts of the crowd rang in his ears. That's great! Young Master Ji has succeeded in his tribulation. Eldest senior brother is so heaven-defying. He actually passed the unprecedented 9th tribulation. He's definitely a peerless genius. The #1 genius of all time. In terms of talent, only eldest senior sister can compare to him. I wonder which tribulation eldest senior brother is going to pass this time. I heard that 2.5 years ago, he was in the 2nd stage of the tribulation stage. Now he should be in the 3rd stage of the tribulation stage, right? Ha ha ha. You're really ignorant. I heard from the elders that eldest senior brother has already reached the 7th stage of the tribulation stage. What? With today's tribulation, doesn't that mean he's in the 8th stage of the tribulation stage? In just 3 years, he has passed 6 tribulations. How can there be such a heaven-defying genius? Crazy. They're all crazy. Even if you search through tens of thousands of years of history, you can't find such a genius. Is he still human? He's a god. All kinds of discussions, exclamations, and shouts converged from all directions. The surging sound waves reverberated in the sky for a long time without dissipating. Ji Tianqing looked indifferent as he stood quietly on solitary cloud peak, accepting the baptism of the heavenly way's reward. The tribulation cloud vortex dissipated and turned into a sacred golden light, which descended from the sky and enveloped him. Swoosh! The sacred golden light enveloped him, cleansed his body and soul, and quickly strengthened his strength. After a full 15 minutes, the sacred golden light dissipated. Ji Tianqing's tribulation was completely over. His strength had increased by about 4 times, and he had reached the 9th stage of the tribulation stage. He had passed the 9 trials of the heavenly way and was about to become an extraordinary martial sage who could look down on all living beings. From now on, his path of martial arts would be smooth, and there would be no more tribulations or bumps. His heart was comforted, but he was not too excited. This was because he knew that passing the 9 stages of tribulation was not the end, but a new beginning. Next, he needed to work harder in his cultivation and break through the shackles as soon as possible to reach the martial sage realm. Only by becoming a martial sage could he cultivate the 7th and 8th stages of the path of the sword spirit and cultivate the absolute saint sword body, which would allow him to traverse the void and control 10,000 swords. That was Kenshin's secret technique, the essence of the path of the sword. Furthermore, only by becoming a martial sage would he have the qualifications to roam the Shenwu continent and resolve all grievances. After pondering for a moment, Ji Tianqing left solitary Cloud Peak and flew across the sky, returning to Cloud Water Palace. Chapter 2059. In the secret chamber of the Cloud Water Palace. Ji Tianqing sat on the spiritual jade throne with his eyes closed as he cultivated and consolidated his martial arts realm. After 3 days of cultivation and adjustment, his spiritual power and spiritual soul were in perfect harmony. His strength at the 9th level of the cross-calamity realm was also consolidated and strengthened. 3 days later, he did not stop cultivating. He continued to cultivate the Sword Soul Tao. He had already cultivated the Sword Soul path to level 6. This was the sword principle divine skill that he had created in his previous life. Now that he was cultivating it again, he was able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. He used 5 days to cultivate the sword soul path to level 6 to perfection. This was to consolidate the foundation of the sword principle and prepare for the future. After all, once he broke through the martial sage realm and began to cultivate the sword soul path to level 7, there would be a qualitative leap. At that time, he would be able to restore the glory of Kenshin and display the best sword principle in the world. Late at night on the 10th day, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation. He did not leave the secret chamber. Instead, he sent his spiritual soul into the Kenshin tomb. Swoosh! The white spiritual soul with a hint of gold came to the dark and cold wasteland. The spiritual soul took on his appearance and flew across the sky. Soon, he arrived in the depths of the wasteland and landed in front of the 18 tombstones. He had not entered the Kenshin tomb for a long time. Although the sword soul path cultivation method was engraved on the tombstones and he had already memorized it deep in his soul. But he still wanted to take a look. The 9 tombstones on the left were still empty. On the 6th tombstone on the right, a few lines of small words appeared clearly. It was the mental cultivation method of the sword soul path to level 6. Ji Tianqing stood in front of the tombstones and muttered softly, "When I cultivate the sword soul path to level 9 and reach the martial god realm, the 18 tombstones will show new content. At that time, my revenge will begin. Only when I reach the martial god realm will I be qualified to investigate what happened back then and take revenge." As he spoke, he slowly stretched out his hand and pressed on the 3rd tombstone. Suddenly, the tombstone lit up with dense golden light and enveloped him. Swoosh! With a flash, Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared, sucked into a mysterious space. Obviously, the 3rd tombstone was the same as the first 2. It had an internal space. This mysterious space seemed to be above the heavens, surrounded by a sea of white clouds. In front of Ji Tianqing was a suspended white jade stone bridge that led to the depths of the sea of clouds. He stepped across the stone bridge and walked into the sea of clouds. Then, he saw a sacred and majestic pagoda standing in front of him. The pagoda was 300 meters tall, and its entire body was gilded with gold, making it look resplendent. On the lintel of the door, there were 3 simple and unadorned characters. Divine Array Pavilion. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this, and he even felt a strong sense of familiarity in his heart. After all, he was the one who had designed and built all of these back then. In the Divine Array Pavilion, he had collected all the Divine Array secret techniques and array diagrams that he had obtained throughout his life. All books, documents, techniques, and materials related to arrays could be found in the Divine Array Pavilion. Ji Tianqing walked to the bottom of the pagoda and pushed open the door carved with dragons and phoenixes. After passing through the door, he entered a spacious hall. Even though it had been sealed for thousands of years, the hall was still spotless. The gemstone lamps on the walls were still dimly lit. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the hall and looked around with a complicated expression. He saw that there were many bookshelves and counters around him. They were all made of special divine gold and had not been damaged for tens of thousands of years. Various ancient books and scrolls were arranged on the bookshelves and counters. There were also many treasure boxes, jade slips, and so on. Ji Tianqing casually picked up a few ancient books and flipped through them. Everything is the same as before. The things of the past are still so familiar. Even the order of the books and techniques is still the same as before. It's a pity that things are still the same, but people have changed. Those people are no longer here. He muttered to himself and walked out of the Divine Array Pavilion. After a while, he left the 3rd tombstone and entered the 4th tombstone. There was also a mysterious space in this tombstone. In the Sea of Clouds, there was also a sacred pagoda named the Divine Medicine Pavilion. As the name suggested, the items in the Divine Medicine Pavilion were all related to divine pills and miraculous medicines. Divine pills, medicinal herbs, medicine books, and pill formulas were all there. Ji Tianqing walked around the Divine Medicine Pavilion and checked the items left behind from the past. All kinds of materials and books for refining pills were very abundant. There were even thousands of bottles of pills in the Divine Medicine Pavilion. Unfortunately, those were all divine pills and above. Those who had not reached the martial god realm could not use them. He searched for a long time and only found a few divine pills. They were all of the best quality in the world. After leaving the Divine Medicine Pavilion, he entered the 5th and 6th tombstones. The mysterious spaces in these two tombstones were the Divine Talisman Pavilion and the Thousand Treasure Pavilion. The items in the Divine Talisman Pavilion were all related to the Tao of Talismans. In the Thousand Treasure Pavilion, there were all kinds of strange items, ancient and damaged treasures, and so on. Ji Tianqing stayed for a long time and saw many old items. He could not help but think of people and the past. His heart was heavy. 2 hours later, he left the Thousand Treasure Pavilion and returned to the wasteland. He stepped into the sky and crossed the wasteland as fast as a shooting star. He arrived at the deepest part of the wasteland. This was the border of the wasteland. It was blocked by a gray fog. However, there was a blank area in the fog. It had a radius of more than 100 miles. The ground of the blank area was carved with array patterns and symbols. It looked extremely mysterious. Back then, before Ji Tianqing had recovered the memories of the sword god, he had already determined that this was an ancient divine level grade array. He used his sword technique to cut open this blank area, revealing the tip of the iceberg. When he was dealing with the demon emperor and the ancestor demon god, he had imitated this array and set up the demon-slaying sword array. Now that he had recovered Kenshin's memories, he knew the whole story. He had found this ancient divine array in a galaxy when he was traveling in the depths of the starry sky. He determined that this was an ancient divine array, a treasure from 100,000 years ago. Even as a divine king, he could not understand the mysteries of the divine array. Before he could study this divine array, an accident and a great battle happened. Later on, he died. But before he died, he used his supreme divine ability to set up a backup plan. Not only did he leave behind Kenshin's tomb to preserve this divine array, he also tampered with the heavenly tribulation and buried his soul memories. In short, this ancient divine array was a treasure that Kenshin was unwilling to give up on even in death. Ji Tianqing had reason to believe that the true grade of this divine array was definitely beyond the divine king level. It was worth studying for a lifetime. Heaven Cleaving Sword. 7-star sword. He waved his palms again and again, slashing out huge golden swords one after another into the fog. Soon, a large blank area was opened up in the fog. When the blank area reached a radius of 500 miles, it could no longer expand. Chapter 2060. Ji Tianqing stayed in the ancient sacred array for 6 hours. In the newly opened empty area, a large number of array inscriptions appeared on the ground. He carefully studied them. He memorized the array inscriptions in his heart. He would slowly study them in the future as they would come in handy. After leaving Kenshin's tomb, his spiritual soul returned to his body. Then, he began to focus on his cultivation and worked hard to break through to the martial sage realm. Before the tribulations, his strength had already reached the limit of the tribulations. After successfully passing the tribulations, he was a true half-step to martial sage. His true strength was comparable to a martial sage. Furthermore, he had received the heavenly ways reward and had been baptized by the divine power. He was only a step away from the martial sage realm. He believed that as long as he cultivated in seclusion for a few more days, he would be able to break through. 5 days passed in a flash. Ji Tianqing consumed a large number of elixirs and spiritual stones to increase his strength as quickly as possible. 5 days later, his strength had reached the complete stage of the tribulation realm. He had reached his limit. He could clearly feel the bottleneck of the martial sage realm. As long as he broke through that bottleneck, he would become a martial sage. Therefore, he continued to cultivate in anticipation, wanting to break through in one go. 3 days later, he tried to break through the bottleneck but he failed. Unwilling to give up, he cultivated for another 2 days and tried to break through the bottleneck again. However, he still did not succeed. He calmed down and cultivated for another 5 days to reach his peak condition. He tried to break through the bottleneck for the 3rd time but he still failed. For half a month, he had failed to break through the bottleneck 3 times. This made him rather depressed. However, he knew that he could not be impatient. He calmed down and thought of a solution. There is a huge gap between the tribulation realm and the martial sage realm. The difference between the 2 realms is like the difference between clouds and mud. Since ancient times, many elites have been stuck at this stage and could not break through. Even when I broke through to the martial sage realm, it took me 9 tries before I finally broke through in a battle of life and death. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing had an idea. He thought to himself, even if I am reborn and have the cultivation experience of my previous life, it is impossible for me to break through in one go. It is not easy to break through to the martial sage realm. I still need a certain opportunity. I have to accumulate my strength and seek a breakthrough in a battle. Or I can think of other ways and rely on external forces. Thus, he ended his cultivation and left the secret room. He was prepared to leave the Luotian mountain and return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. With the help of the heavenly array and the star divine furnace, he could quickly break through to the martial sage realm. However, just as he was thinking, Black Eagle came up to him and bowed respectfully. "Young master, you've finally come out of seclusion." Granny Long had come twice before, saying that she had something important to discuss. "Knowing that you are cultivating in seclusion, Granny Long left a message for you to see her after you come out." Hearing Black Hawk's words, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, Granny Long is probably looking for me because of the northern battlefield. He waved his hand to dismiss the Black Hawk and stepped out of the Cloud Water Palace, heading towards the palace where Granny Long lived. In a simple and elegant study, he saw Granny Long who was busy. Granny Long sat in front of a desk, carefully reading a pile of memorials, documents, and jade slips. Her expression was focused and solemn, as if she had forgotten the passage of time. Ji Tianqing walked to the desk, cupped his hands and bowed. "Granny Long, you were looking for me." Granny Long was awakened by him and put down the documents in her hands. She smiled kindly at him and nodded. "Tianqing, you've already come out of seclusion. You've successfully passed the heavenly tribulation and reached the 9th level of the crossing calamity realm. Now that you've consolidated your cultivation, you're not far from the martial sage realm, right?" Ji Tianqing didn't say much and only nodded his head. Granny Long smiled and said, "With your talent, I believe that you'll be able to break through to the martial sage realm soon. At that time, you'll shock the world. I congratulate you in advance." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. "Granny Long, it's still early. Let's not talk about it for now. Didn't you call me here because you have something important to discuss?" "What is it?" Granny Long smiled and said, "I have good news for you. 20 days ago, the Divine Master had sent a Divine Soul Doppelganger to the Demon Clan's base in the North Underworld Mountain. After that battle, the demons suffered great losses. The bodies of 2 great demon saints were destroyed, and they lost countless elites. Now, the news has spread throughout the Xinwu continent and shocked every country. On the battlefield in the north, the demons' morale has declined, and their offense has declined. However, the soldiers of Scandinavia received the news and are now launching a counterattack. Tianqing, now is the best time for you to go to the battlefield in the north and participate in the war." Ji Tianqing understood what she meant and thought to himself, right now, the most important thing for me is to break through to the martial sage realm. There are only two choices in front of me. I can either return to Tianzhu Mountain and borrow the power of the firmament array and the divine star furnace to break through the bottleneck. Or I can go to the battlefield in the north and fight the demons to break through. After weighing the pros and cons, he cupped his hands towards Granny Long and said solemnly, "Granny Long, don't worry. I will rush to the battlefield in the north tomorrow and participate in the war as soon as possible." Granny Long revealed a gratified smile when she saw that he had agreed and nodded. "You are the eldest disciple of Luotian Mountain and the continent's #1 genius, a half-step martial sage. Your identity is special, and your strength, methods, and strategies are outstanding. You will definitely shine on the battlefield. I have already made arrangements for you. Once you reach the north, you will go to the White Frost Empire's Heavenly Lion Pass and report to Lu Baishuang. You will stay by her side and serve as her deputy commander. You will command millions of soldiers." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Lu Baishuang? Who is she?" Granny Long smiled and explained, "She is the Saint Emperor of the White Frost Empire and one of the 5 commanders of the northern battlefield. The northern battlefield is very long, spanning hundreds of millions of kilometers, and only the 5 commanders can guard it. There were more than a dozen important checkpoints along the nearly 100 million miles long defensive line. If any one of them is lost, it may lead to the fall of an empire. The Heavenly Lion Pass is one of them. It is the northern gate of the White Frost Empire and must not be lost. Lu Baishuang has 3 million soldiers under her, and they have been guarding the defensive line near the Heavenly Lion Pass. It can be said that they have fought a bloody battle and have contributed a lot. After you go, you must assist her with all your strength and do your best to defend the checkpoint and defeat the demons as soon as possible." After saying that, Granny Long took out a spatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianqing. "You don't need to pack your luggage. I have already prepared it for you. There are cultivation resources worth 30 million here. I have prepared all the elixirs, treasures, talismans and other resources. In addition, your identity token and the letter to Lu Baishuang are also in the ring." Chapter 2061. It was obvious that Granny Long had already planned for this and arranged everything. This saved Ji Tianqing a lot of trouble. After receiving the interspatial ring, he could set off immediately. After all, he was only going to the northern battlefield to kill demons and find a breakthrough in the war. As for who he would be under and who he would fight alongside, he didn't care. "Thank you for your trouble, Granny Long. Since Granny Long has made all the necessary preparations, I will go bid farewell to Yao Yao and set off shortly." Ji Tianqing bowed to Granny Long and left the study. After returning to Cloud Water Palace, he quietly entered Yun Yao's secret room and secretly observed for a while. Yun Yao was refining the Earth Spirit Divine Pearl and her strength had clearly increased. She was too focused on her cultivation and didn't notice Ji Tianqing's arrival. Thus, Ji Tianqing left a letter on the stone table in the corner of the secret room and quietly left. When he walked out of Cloud Water Palace, the sun was rising. Xian Yu and Black Dragon stayed at Pillar of Heaven's mountains to cultivate and didn't follow him. He wanted to rush to the north, so he could only fly without a mount. Little Blue Kun was in the Sword World, but its body was too bloated. If he rode it, the scene would be too comical. From Luotian Mountain to the White Frost Empire in the north, he had to cross half of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. Even with Ji Tianqing's strength, it took him half a month to reach the vicinity of Heavenly Lion Pass. The scenery in the north was different from the bright and beautiful south. It was more of a cold and monotonous color. The sky was overcast and filled with gray clouds. There was also a thick smell of gunpowder. The earth was bleak and desolate. It was late winter. The rolling mountain range had lost its green and was dyed with a bleak yellow. Even the water level of the river at the foot of the mountain had dried up. The river surface was as calm as a mirror. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the river's surface was mostly frozen. Ji Tianqing put his hands behind his back and walked unhurriedly. He crossed 30 miles with each step and flew directly to the north. A few hundred miles in front of him, there were two particularly majestic mountains. The two mountains were not far from each other, but they were both tens of thousands of meters tall, reaching straight into the clouds. Between the two mountains was a huge gap. It was also covered by layers of clouds and mist, faintly discernible. The mountain range that connected the two mountain peaks extended to the east and west respectively, forming a giant natural wall that stretched across the mountains. If one wanted to enter the Empire of White Frost from the northern border, they would have to cross this natural wall. Ji Tianqing knew that the huge pass was the Heavenly Lion Pass, which was also the northern gate of the White Frost Empire. Ever since the establishment of the White Frost Empire, they had stationed a large number of troops near the Heavenly Lion Pass. So far, it has been more than 600 years. Now, 90% of the region north of the Heavenly Lion Pass had fallen, occupied by the demon race's army. The Heavenly Lion Pass had become the barrier of the White Frost Empire, the throat of fate. Once the Heavenly Lion Pass fell, the consequences would be unimaginable. Not long after, Ji Tianqing flew above the Heavenly Lion Pass. He looked down at the Heavenly Lion Pass from above and saw the situation inside and outside the pass clearly. Between the two mountain peaks was a valley with a radius of 100 miles. The terrain was vast and flat. However, rows of arrow towers were built in the valley. Densely packed spear arrays were laid out, and a powerful Saint Grade array was set up. There were also hundreds of thousands of armored and sword-wielding soldiers guarding the entrance of the valley day and night. The towering mountain peaks on both sides of the valley were very steep. Large areas of grayish-brown rocks were exposed and hung with icicles. The soldiers of the Empire of White Frost had dug densely packed caves on the cliff and built a huge fort. Every cave was lit with fire, and there were countless armored warriors walking around. Ji Tianqing scanned with his spiritual sense and estimated that there were at least 500,000 soldiers hidden in the two mountain peaks. Apart from that, the peaks of the two mountain peaks were also transformed into flat land. Many palaces and buildings were built there. Those palaces and buildings had a dignified aura and were heavily guarded. At a glance, one could tell that they were the residences of generals of various ranks. Ji Tianqing looked away and observed the situation on both sides of the Heavenly Lion Pass. On the mountain range on both sides of the pass, a military camp was built every 20 miles. More than 10,000 soldiers were stationed there. The defense extended to both ends of the mountain range, extending for a few thousand miles. When Ji Tianqing saw the situation, he nodded to himself and said, as expected of a heavily guarded place. There are really 3 million lions here. No wonder the demons couldn't take them down after so long. However, it's useless to defend blindly. We have to find an opportunity to counterattack. Only by defeating the demons and forcing them to retreat to North Underworld Mountain can we be considered victorious. At this moment, a group of lightly armored guards riding red arrow falcons came to Ji Tianqing's side at lightning speed and surrounded him. Who are you? Why did you barge into the Heavenly Lion Pass? Tell me your name. There were a total of 9 arrow falcon knights. All of them had the strength of the primordial spirit realm. They were the most elite scouts. Chapter 2062. The Holy Emperor of the White Frost Empire, Liu Baishuang, was one of the 5 commanders. Not only did she have to manage the empire's affairs, but she also had to lead millions of soldiers and deal with complicated military affairs. Even if one was a martial saint, they would not be able to do everything by themselves, much less do everything by themselves. Therefore, she had 2 deputy commanders under her to help her manage the millions of soldiers and guard the Sky Lion Pass. The left deputy commander Yu Fu was the ancestor of the number 1 sect in the White Frost Empire. he had cultivated for more than 1,800 years. He was not only the ancestor of the Tianhua sect, but also the martial arts leader of the White Frost Empire. He had supreme prestige in the martial arts world. All the martial arts sects and forces in the White Frost Empire followed his lead and respected him very much. The right deputy commander under Liu Baishuang was originally the commander of the empire's army. This person was a martial saint expert who was good at fighting and was regarded highly by Liu Baishuang. But because of this, half a year ago, the right deputy commander led a large number of elite experts to stop the demon army and destroy the demon army's conspiracy. Although the mission was a success, the right deputy commander successfully disrupted the demon army's sneak attack plan. But he was also heavily surrounded and killed by the commander of the demon army. The commander of the demon army was one of the 4 demon saints, second demon saint Song Yu. After the right deputy commander died, the army's morale fell. Liu Baishuang was also depressed for a few days. The position of the right deputy commander had been empty, and no one could replace it. Granny Long had arranged for Ji Tianqing to come to the Sky Lion Pass to take over the right deputy commander's position. In half a year, the heavy responsibility of commanding the 3 million soldiers and guarding the Sky Lion Pass fell on the left deputy commander Yu Fu. Yu Fu strongly advocated guarding the Sky Lion Pass and not going out to fight. The official explanation was that because the right deputy commander had died, the morale was low and it was not suitable to fight outside the pass. Otherwise, they would be defeated. But there were rumors in the army that Yu Fu was afraid of death and did not want to repeat the mistake of the right deputy commander. At the same time, Yu Fu had great power. Besides Liu Baishuang, no one could control him. In this half a year, he had used his power to gain benefits for the Tianhua sect and secretly accumulated a large number of cultivation resources. As long as Liu Baishuang was not here, the Sky Lion Pass was almost as alone. At this moment, in a magnificent palace at the peak of the mountain. In the spacious but dark secret chamber, the floor and walls were paved with top-grade spiritual jade, and the air was filled with colorful spiritual energy. Generally speaking, martial artists' private chambers were used for closed-door cultivation. In order not to affect the mind, the furnishings were very simple. However, this secret room was different. It was decorated magnificently, and countless cultivation resources and gems were piled up. In the corner of the secret chamber, there was also a steaming hot bath filled with colorful spirit liquid. A thin, white-haired old man, who was 7 feet tall, was lying in the pool with his arms and legs spread out. His eyes were closed as he enjoyed the nourishment of the spirit liquid. He was not wearing any clothes, only a piece of white silk cloth to cover his important parts. 2 maidservants who were as delicate as jade and tender as water were squatting on either side of him, helping him relax his muscles. Even though the 2 beautiful women maintained their smiles the entire time, their faces were filled with charm as they served the white-haired old man wholeheartedly. However, their eyes inadvertently revealed a look of fear and dread. This was because the white-haired old man they were serving was the martial arts master of the Empire of White Frost, the deputy commander of millions of troops, Yu Fu. At this moment, the voice of his trusted guard came from outside the secret chamber. "Commander Yu, General Qin of the scout camp requests to see you. He says that he has something important to report." Hearing the voice, Yu Fu slowly opened his eyes and raised his snow-white eyebrows. "Come in and report," he said expressionlessly. Then, the door of the secret room opened a crack, and a guard in black with a cloak bowed and entered the secret room. This person was Yu Fu's trusted guard. He guarded the door of the secret chamber and passed on the message for him. As for General Qin, he could only wait outside the secret chamber. He was not qualified to enter. The black-clothed guard lowered his head and came to the side of the bath. With a respectful and cautious look, he reported, "Commander Yu, a young man who calls himself Ji Tianqing found General Qin." After explaining the matter in detail, he did not say anything and waited quietly. Even if the two beautiful women were only wearing a thin silk dress, the beautiful scenery was faintly discernible, he did not dare to glance at them. When Yu Fu heard the news, he could not help but frown and sneer. I didn't expect that kid to come so quickly. Humph. So what if he's a disciple of Luotian Mountain? He just made a contribution at the western border and took back a few mines. He's so young and weak, but he wants to use the name of a disciple of Luotian Mountain to become a deputy commander. With his little ability, can he command millions of troops? I'm afraid he'll wet his pants the moment he gets on the battlefield. As the deputy commander, Yu Fu naturally knew that Ji Tianqing was going to be the deputy commander of the right side. However, he was disdainful and dissatisfied. After the black-clothed guard heard this, he asked carefully, "Commander Yu, shall I report to General Qin and ask him to chase that person away?" Yu Fu nodded. He kneaded the legs of the girl beside him and sneered, "What kind of cat or dog dares to come to Heavenly Lion Pass and ask to see the Saint Emperor? If everyone imitates him, won't it be a mess? Let's give him a show of strength first and kill his spirit." Although he's the deputy commander appointed by Luotian Mountain and none of us can disobey him. However, Ben Shuai wants to let him know who's the real commander with authority. He's just a kid, so he just needs to wear the title of deputy commander and stay here obediently. This subordinate understands. The black-clothed guard quickly nodded. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Commander Yu, that kid is very young and he's a disciple of Luotian Mountain. He must be proud and arrogant. What if he can't bear the humiliation and gets into a dispute with General Qin?" Ha ha ha. Yu Fu immediately laughed and said with a face full of contempt, "That's good. He's just a kid in the tribulation realm and General Qin wants to chase him down the mountain. When the Saint Emperor and Luotian Mountain ask for the reason, won't Ben Shuai be able to make up stories? An impetuous, arrogant and domineering young disciple wants to be the deputy commander of an army of 1,000,000? It's simply the biggest joke in the world. Whether it's the Saint Emperor or Luotian Mountain, they will be extremely disappointed in him." The black-clothed guard quickly cupped his hands and said sincerely, "Commander Yu is really brilliant. This subordinate admires you to the extreme." After saying that, he bowed and left the secret room. Ji Tianqing sat in the main hall of the scout camp and closed his eyes to rest. There was a cup of tea on the table in front of him but he didn't touch it. There were 2 soldiers guarding the door but he didn't look at them. After waiting for a full 15 minutes, General Qin returned with a gloomy expression. Moreover, there were 6 black-clothed guards behind him. They were all elites in the primordial spirit realm. Tap, tap, tap. Chapter 2063. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes when he heard the footsteps. Ji Tianqing glanced at General Qin and saw his strange expression. He had a premonition. "General Qin, what's the result?" Ji Tianqing asked expressionlessly. "What's the result?" General Qin glared at him and shouted in a dignified tone, "You reckless brat! How dare you come to Sky Lion Pass to deceive others? You must be tired of living. Who do you think you are? How dare you meet the Divine Emperor? Someone come. Capture this audacious guy and punish him with 80 strokes of the whip. Then, chase him down the mountain." General Qin waved his hand and gave the order. 6 guards in black armor pounced on Ji Tianqing like wolves and tigers. Ji Tianqing was still sitting as steadily as Mount Tai. He only frowned, and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful sneer. "It's just as I expected." He had expected that no one would believe him. No one would accept him as the deputy commander. Once he arrived at Sky Lion Pass, someone would definitely make things difficult for him and take him down a notch. He had already guessed this. It was human nature. There was nothing strange about it. In other words, he treated this notch as a test. If he couldn't even pass this test, how could he be the deputy commander? Wouldn't he be the laughing stock of the world? Swoosh! Swoosh! The 6 black-armored guards attacked Ji Tianqing at the same time, using their capture technique to attack him. Ji Tianqing sat there motionlessly, but his entire body was emitting an invisible pressure that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Bam! With a muffled explosion, the 6 guards in black armor were sent flying. They fell to the ground and fainted. Even General Qin, who was in the crossing calamity realm, was forced to take 8 steps back. His face was pale and his chest was heaving rapidly. Such a scene caused General Qin's expression to change drastically. A wisp of shock and fear flashed across his eyes. He couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing had knocked out the 6 guards without even lifting a finger. Even his dermic powers and divine soul were shaken. He felt dizzy and blurry. He was so young yet he had such terrifying strength. As expected of the eldest disciple of the Luotian mountain. Of course, while he was shocked, General Qin did not forget his mission. He pointed angrily at Ji Tianqing and shouted with righteous indignation, "You bastard, you are not afraid of death." He actually dared to behave atrociously in the Heavenly Lion Pass. "You're dead for sure now. No one can save you. Men, take this madman down." General Qin's voice was filled with anger. His loud and clear voice echoed throughout the entire palace. 8 commanders had already been stationed outside the palace. They were all powerhouses in the crossing calamity realm. They rushed in as soon as they heard the commotion. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing finally spoke. He sat boldly on the chair and stared at General Qin with a playful look. He sneered, "If this is all you've done, then it's too disappointing. Not to mention the 8 commanders you placed outside the palace, even if General Qin were to personally attack, he wouldn't be able to defeat a single finger of mine. General Qin, don't waste your energy. Go and get Deputy Commander Yu to come here personally." General Qin originally thought that Ji Tianqing was just a little arrogant and would not dare to be impudent in the Heavenly Lion Pass. After all, this was the territory of the White Frost Empire. When Ji Tianqing first came here, he could only choose to endure silently. He would not dare to act arrogantly. Otherwise, if he caused a bad influence here, how would he be able to convince the people in the future? But he never thought that Ji Tianqing would be so arrogant. For a moment, General Qin was so angry that his face turned purple. His hand that was pointing at Ji Tianqing was trembling. You have such a big tone. You are so arrogant that you are out of control. Brat, don't think that just because you are a disciple of the Luotian mountain, you can be unrestrained. This is the Heavenly Lion Pass, Deputy Commander Yu's territory. You are openly causing trouble here. This general will not let you off easily. General Qin was so angry that he let it slip. But he immediately covered it up. He waved his hand and ordered the 8 commanders to pounce on Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing heard it clearly. Originally, he was wondering whether it was Deputy Commander Yu who was targeting him or Lu Baishuang who instructed him to put on a show of strength. Now that he heard General Qin's tone, he could immediately determine that it was most likely Deputy Commander Yu's doing. Since that was the case, he was even more confident. He was determined to make a big deal out of this. Trying to put on a show of strength? Trying to make him bow and submit to humiliation? Such a person had not been born yet. Seeing the 8 Tribulation Realm commanders pouncing on him, Ji Tianqing was still sitting on the pear wood chair calmly. A bunch of useless people. His cold gaze swept across the crowd. A layer of dazzling white light burst out from his body. Buzz. The white light bloomed and enveloped the 8 Tribulation Realm commanders. Instantly, the commanders who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws were all shaken until they vomited blood and were sent flying backward. Plop. Plop. Everyone fell on their backs in the main hall, making a series of dull thuds. The white light spread out and shook the entire main hall. Dozens of cracks appeared on the ground. The tables, chairs, and screens on the ground were all smashed into powder and scattered on the ground. The previously spacious and tidy hall immediately turned into a mess. Ji Tianqing deliberately controlled his strength. If he did not control it, the entire palace would have been turned into ruins. Everyone was lying on the ground, crying out in pain. They were in a miserable state. Only Ji Tianqing was still sitting on the pear-wood chair. The chair under him was not damaged at all. General Qin stood in the main hall and glared at Ji Tianqing. His face turned green and white. He was shocked and angry. You! How dare you! You openly attacked the soldiers of Heavenly Lion Pass. You are rebelling. You are finished. No one can save you. Even Luotian Mountain will not condone you and cover up for you to commit such a heinous crime. You want to be the deputy commander of Heavenly Lion Pass with your tyrannical and cruel behavior? Dream on. Although his subordinates' guards and commanders were injured, General Qin seemed to be very angry. But he was secretly laughing in his heart. He was very happy. Because he had completed the task given by Yu Fu. He had confirmed Ji Tianqing's crime. What was done could not be undone. Ji Tianqing could not clear his name no matter what. He. Boy, how can you fight with Commander Yu? General Qin looked at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile and mocked him disdainfully when he thought of the good news. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He smiled and said, "Of course I will not be merciful to idiots like you who are seeking death. Didn't Yu Fu want to confirm my crime? What are these useless soldiers and crab generals? Let him come here personally and be beaten up by me. Isn't that more to his liking?" General Qin frowned. Cold light shot out from his eyes. He sneered and said, "Boy, you are too arrogant. Are you worthy of Commander Yu to take action? Just you wait. I will gather all the generals and beat you down from Heavenly Lion Pass." After saying that, General Qin quickly left the main hall. He summoned 2 guards and asked them to pass the message. One of the guards rushed to Yu Fu's palace to pass the message. Chapter 2064. Not long later, the news of Ji Tianqing wreaking havoc in the scout camp spread across the mountain peak. When the generals of the various camps heard about this, they were all filled with righteous indignation and were eager to fight. Those who could become generals and lead a camp of over 10,000 soldiers were all experts in the tribulation realm. These people relied on their military exploits to climb out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They were all elite experts who had experienced hundreds of battles. They were iron-blooded, valiant, and considered themselves to be unparalleled in their loyalty and bravery. They looked down on the disciples of the aristocratic families and sects the most. In their eyes, those were all delicate and weak flowers that grew in a greenhouse. They only had strength and cultivation, but they didn't have the ability to kill the enemy. They were all good for nothing and were useless. Therefore, when they heard that the eldest disciple of the Luotian Mountain, Ji Tianqing, had come to the scout camp and was wreaking havoc, they rushed over to the scout camp. All the generals rushed over, wanting to teach that lawless guy a lesson. However, when the dozens of generals arrived at the scout camp's main hall, they were all dumbfounded. They saw that the scout camp's main hall was still intact. However, the main hall was in a mess and there were many bloodstains on the ground. Dozens of commanders and generals who were either severely injured or unconscious were lying on the ground in a disorderly manner, looking particularly miserable. Only Ji Tianqing was still sitting at the main seat in the main hall. He was calmly holding a cup of spiritual tea and sipping it leisurely. There were no injuries on his body. His robe was as white as snow and his long hair was neat and tidy. No one would dare to believe that he had just fought with a large number of people and even injured dozens of experts. Seeing this scene, more than 30 generals looked at General Qin who was sitting at the entrance of the main hall. General Qin's armor was tattered and his hair was disheveled like a chicken's nest. His face was bruised and swollen, and his face was covered in blood. He looked miserable and comical. Seeing him like this, a few generals couldn't help but laugh. "General Qin, what happened to you? You also fought with that fellow? You were beaten to this state. Too hateful. That fellow is too arrogant. We must not let him off." General Qin couldn't help but tell the truth after being questioned by everyone. "Ji Tianqing, he is too much." He let out an arrogant statement that he wanted to fight his way through the entire Heavenly Lion Pass. If anyone refused to submit, he would beat them until they submitted. Even Marshal Yu was the same. The soldiers were furious and wanted to join forces to capture him, but they were all severely injured by him. When I saw that everyone had fainted, I wanted to send everyone out so that they could recover as soon as possible so that their martial arts foundations would not be affected. I didn't expect that Ji Tianqing would beat me up without saying anything. General Qin's face was swollen like a pig's head, and his lips were like sausages. The way he spoke was especially comical. In particular, he was too angry, too agitated, and the way his face was distorted was even more ridiculous. The generals were both angry and amused, which made General Qin even more ashamed and furious. However, there were a few steady and experienced generals who shouted righteously, "Generals, this matter concerns the reputation of the entire Heavenly Lion Pass. We absolutely cannot back down. This brat is the eldest disciple of the Luotian Mountain, we naturally wouldn't dare to kill him. We still need to capture him and hand him over to the Luotian Mountain for them to deal with. However, we must give him a good beating, as long as we don't kill him. That's right. This brat is arrogant and lawless. We must beat him half to death, so that he can live with his tail between his legs in the future. What are you all waiting for? Let's go together and capture him and hand him over to Marshal Yu for punishment." A few prestigious generals spoke. They took the lead and stepped into the main hall, charging towards Ji Tianqing. The other 30 generals followed suit and used their unique skills and secret techniques, vowing to capture Ji Tianqing on the spot. Ji Tianqing, who was sitting on the main seat, raised his eyelids and glanced at the crowd. He waved his hand as if he was shooing away flies. Swish! 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 A dazzling golden light burst out and turned into 30 fist shadows, ruthlessly blasting towards the generals. Although the main hall was 100 meters wide, it was still too narrow. The generals huddled together. When they saw the sky full of fist shadows, it was too late for them to dodge. Bang! 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 A series of dull sounds burst out, like muffled thunder on a dry day, reverberating in the sky above the mountain peak. More than 30 generals in the Crossing Calamity Realm spat out blood from their mouths. They flew back in a sorry state and fell into the main hall. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions. The huge palace was instantly shattered into pieces, turning into countless rubble that collapsed onto the ground. Hundreds of generals and soldiers in the main hall were immediately buried in the ruins. Fortunately, everyone was quite powerful. Even if they were smashed by the brick ruins, they only suffered some superficial injuries, which made them look even more miserable. No one was smashed to death by the brick ruins. That would be too ridiculous. Only Ji Tianqing was unscathed. There was not even a speck of dust on his body. He was still sitting on the big chair made of pear wood, holding a cup of spiritual tea in his hand, floating above the ruins. The 30 generals were covered in dust and dirt. They climbed out of the ruins in a sorry state and pointed at him, cursing. "Bastard, how dare you humiliate us like this? Lad, the Heavenly Lion Pass will not let you off. No matter how powerful you are or how noble your status is, you should not humiliate us like this. We are all meritorious officials. Lad, don't be so smug. When Commander Yu comes here personally, you will pay back 10 times. Yes. Everyone, go and ask Commander Yu to come here. We must skin this lad alive. Everyone was ashamed and resentful. They hated Ji Tianqing very much. However, after witnessing Ji Tianqing's terrifying strength, they did not dare to do anything rash. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered with them. He let them make a racket and pretended that he did not hear anything. He continued to drink his tea. Such a shocking commotion would definitely alarm the two mountains and spread throughout the entire Heavenly Lion Pass. This was exactly what he wanted. It would be best if all the generals and soldiers in the Heavenly Lion Pass could see it. Deputy Commander Yu wanted to put him in his place and force him to swallow his anger and give in. He could also use this opportunity to turn the Heavenly Lion Pass upside down and establish his dominance. Only powerful and invincible martial strength could intimidate the heroes and force them to bow down. No matter what kind of conspiracy, he would not bother to resolve it. He had his own supreme skills and methods to break it with force. Conspiracies and tricks were unorthodox. Only supreme martial strength was the way to go. As expected, the main hall of the scout camp collapsed. The curses of dozens of generals immediately alarmed the two mountains. In just 15 minutes, the news had spread throughout the entire Heavenly Lion Pass. During this time, dozens of tribulation passing stage powerhouses rushed to the mountain peak and joined forces to attack Ji Tianqing. However, these people suffered the same fate as the previous generals. They were all severely injured by Ji Tianqing. They vomited blood and lay on the ground with dispirited looks on their faces. Those who were not strong enough were knocked out on the spot and lay on the ruins in a sorry state. For a moment, the entire Heavenly Lion Pass was in an uproar. When the hundreds of thousands of soldiers heard about this, they were filled with righteous indignation. They could not wait to tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. Only the mountain peak on the west side of the pass was peaceful. Chapter 2065. Before coming to Sky Lion Pass, Ji Tianqing had already understood the situation. The right deputy commander had died in battle, and the left deputy commander had taken over the power and was unwilling to send out troops. Ji Tianqing knew all of this. The mountain peak to the east where he was at was where the left deputy commander Yu Fu was stationed. The generals stationed on this mountain peak were all Yu Fu's trusted subordinates. The generals on the west mountain peak were all former subordinates of the right deputy commander. Although many of the generals had been bought over by Yu Fu in the past half a year. However, there were still many generals who were unwilling to submit to Yu Fu and become his lackeys. These people were either loyal to the right deputy commander, loyal to Holy Emperor Bai Shuang, or neutral. Now, Ji Tianqing saw that the west mountain peak was peaceful, and many generals were secretly watching. They had no intention of getting involved in this matter, and he could not help but nod his head secretly. The truth was just as he had expected, and the situation was becoming clearer. Now that things have gotten out of hand, it is impossible to cover it up. Yu Fu has achieved his goal, and it is time for him to appear. As for the generals stationed on the west mountain peak, they will most likely report this matter to Lu Baishuang and let her deal with it personally to prevent Yu Fu from acting arbitrarily. When Lu Baishuang appears personally, this matter should be over. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing silently calculated in his heart, and took another sip of tea. He sat in the sky, drinking tea amidst the clouds. Below him was a pile of ruins, and more than 100 generals were lying haphazardly on the ground, and more than 30 people were cursing. The two completely different scenes created a strong contrast, and it was unforgettable. Ji Tianqing had left an extremely deep impression on the soldiers who were hiding in the surroundings and secretly watching the battle. At this moment, in the palace deep in the mountain peak, a dazzling golden light shone. Swoosh! The golden light streaked across the sky and headed straight for the scout camp. In the blink of an eye, the golden light flew above the scout camp and stopped 100 meters in front of Ji Tianqing. The golden light dissipated, and 9 figures appeared. The person in the lead was a white-haired old man wearing golden armor and a purple jade gilded green feather helmet. This person's body was thin and his appearance was unremarkable. However, his eyes were like pitch-black abysses, causing people to feel apprehensive when looking at them. Ji Tianqing did not need to guess to know that this white-haired old man was the left deputy commander Yu Fu. Of the 8 people behind Yu Fu, there were 4 black-clothed guards and 4 silver-armored generals. The strength of these 8 experts had all reached the 5th level of the tribulation passing realm and were all martial lords. They were originally not generals in the army, but Yu Fu's disciples and experts from various sections. They were recruited by him to work for him. The generals on the ruins were screaming in pain or cursing Ji Tianqing with righteous indignation. Suddenly seeing Yu Fu arrive, everyone's spirits were lifted, revealing a look of joy as they cheered. Great! Marshal Yu is here. Ha ha ha. Marshal Yu was indeed alarmed. That brat is dead for sure. General Yu has always been strict with his troops. Let's see how that brat can still be arrogant. Ji Tianqing. Weren't you very arrogant just now? Didn't you boast that you would conquer the entire Heavenly Lion Pass? Let's see how you can still be arrogant now. He, everyone, just wait for the good show. Marshal Yu will definitely cripple that brat and make him kowtow to apologize. At that time, that brat's face will be swept to the ground. Let's see if he still has the face to return to Luotian Mountain. Everyone is excitedly discussing, their words are filled with anticipation. Only by seeing Ji Tianqing being oppressed can the hatred in their hearts be dispelled. Yu Fu's face is gloomy, his brows are filled with anger. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze and shouted, "Brat! I don't care who you are, what's your origin and background? Today, you have behaved atrociously in Heavenly Lion Pass, injured more than 100 soldiers and destroyed the scout camp. These are all crimes worthy of death." His deep and vigorous voice, containing unquestionable majesty, resounded through the sky. Everyone on the mountain peak, including the tens of thousands of spectating soldiers, held their breaths and stared at the scene without blinking. Ji Tianqing looked at Yu Fu with a cold smile and said in a playful tone, "Deputy Marshal Yu, you really have good methods. The moment you appear, you put such a big label on me, but you didn't ask about my identity and purpose. You are so eager to convict me, aren't you a little too deliberate?" At this point, he pretended to be suddenly enlightened and said, "Oh. I almost forgot. I asked General Qin to inform you before, so of course you know my identity and purpose. So, you sent so many useless people to capture me. You are just deliberately humiliating me and framing me. Since that's the case, I don't mind introducing my identity and purpose in front of everyone." Ji Tianqing said these words in one breath without pausing, not giving Yu Fu a chance to interrupt. After he finished speaking, he took out a dark golden token and a luxurious letter from his spatial ring. He showed the token and letter to the surrounding people and announced in a solemn tone, "This seat is Ji Tianqing, the chief disciple of Luotian Mountain. I have come to Sky Lion Pass to participate in the battle and take up the position of Right Deputy Marshal under the orders of the Divine Master. It's a pity that a certain Deputy Marshal looked down on me and dared to disobey the Divine Master's orders and sent his subordinates to besiege this seat. Yu Fu, you actually dared to harm your comrades and murder the new Right Deputy Marshal so that you can monopolize the power. This seat needs an explanation from you." Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, the expressions of the tens of thousands of soldiers in all directions instantly changed. Countless people revealed looks of realization and started to discuss secretly. Heavens! This fellow was actually sent by Luotian Mountain to participate in the battle and take up the position of Right Deputy Marshal. How can this be? We didn't know anything about this beforehand. It can't be fake, right? He is so young and not a martial saint, how can he be a deputy marshal? It can't be fake. If he faked the Divine Master's orders, that would be a heinous crime. It's over. Marshal, you did not investigate clearly before sending everyone to attack. This won't end well. The many soldiers understood what Ji Tianqing meant. They guessed that Yu Fu deliberately sent people to humiliate him. Only now did everyone understand why Ji Tianqing wanted to cause trouble in the scout camp. It turned out that there was a reason for this. However, these soldiers were all Yu Fu's subordinates. Even if they understood, they did not dare to say it out loud. At the same time, Yu Fu's expression turned even gloomier. The cold light in his eyes turned sharper. Originally, he had been soaking in the hot spring in a secret room. When he heard his trusted guards reporting the news, he felt even more pleased with himself. The more trouble Ji Tianqing caused, the happier he was. This would prove that Ji Tianqing was guilty. At the same time, this would prove that Ji Tianqing was too impetuous and would not be able to accomplish much. He would not be a threat to Yu Fu. When the matter blew up and startled the entire Heavenly Lion Pass, Yu Fu calmly rushed over to deal with it. However, Yu Fu did not expect that Ji Tianqing was not stupid at all. It seemed like he had already planned this. They had just met, but Ji Tianqing took out a bunch of things in quick succession. He even took out his identity medallion and letters. Chapter 2066. Yu Fu had no choice but to re-evaluate Ji Tianqing. I thought he was a naive and arrogant hothead without any shrewdness. I didn't expect him to be prepared. Ben Shuai will have to use more methods. Yu Fu thought to himself as he looked at Ji Tianqing with an even colder gaze. Ji Tianqing, you keep saying that you came to Sky Lion Pass under the orders of the Divine Master. But Ben Shuai knows that Granny Long of Luotian Mountain sent you here. Your actions are equivalent to forging an oracle and blaspheming the Divine Master. This is an unforgivable crime and your death is not to be regretted. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said calmly, Deputy Commander, you, don't forget that Luotian Mountain is the Divine Master's training ground. Granny Long guards Luotian Mountain and is the spokesperson of the Divine Master. Her decrees are not only approved by the Divine Master, they are also the orders of the Divine Master. Yu Fu frowned and stared at him with a sharp gaze. You are obviously twisting words and forcing logic. Ji Tianqing sneered, you are ignorant and inexperienced. You are deliberately framing me. Yu Fu was even angrier as he shouted, even if you came to Sky Lion Pass under the orders of the Deputy Commander. But before you took up the position, you clashed with your subordinates, destroyed the scout camp and injured so many generals. Your nature is so violent and your methods are so cruel. What qualifications do you have to lead the army? All the soldiers are seriously injured and will need at least 1 to 2 years to recover. During this time, the defense of Sky Lion Pass is weak and it is very likely to be broken through. At that time, the demon race army will invade and the entire empire of White Frost will suffer a disaster. The consequences will be unimaginable. Ji Tianqing, what are your intentions? If you did not look like a human, Ben Shuai would even suspect that you are a spy of the demon race. These imposing words spread throughout the entire mountain peak, causing countless soldiers to be filled with righteous indignation. Everyone agreed with Yu Fu's words and looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of hatred and enmity. Even many of Yu Fu's trusted generals raised their arms and shouted. Ji Tianqing has ulterior motives. He tried to destroy the defenses of the Heavenly Lion Pass. He has committed a heinous crime. How could he be so cruel to his own kind? This person is inhumane. In front of everyone's eyes, the heavens are clear. We will definitely not accept this person guarding the Heavenly Lion Pass. Marshal Yu, please punish Ji Tianqing severely and give us justice. More than a dozen generals shouted first, and soon, dozens of people echoed, looking like a group of excited people. When Yu Fu saw that it was about time, he glared at Ji Tianqing and released an invisible pressure that enveloped him. Ji Tianqing, what else do you have to say? The powerful pressure of a martial saint ruthlessly suppressed Ji Tianqing. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely be terrified. They would be suppressed to the point of bending their backs and lowering their heads, or even lying on the ground. It looked as if he had bowed his head and admitted his guilt. It was hard for him to refute. However, Yu Fu did not expect that Ji Tianqing would not move at all. He did not react to his pressure at all. How is this possible? This brat can actually ignore my pressure. Yu Fu was shocked. However, he could not tell Ji Tianqing's cultivation level. He could not help but frown. At this moment, Ji Tianqing laughed loudly and said, "Deputy Marshal Yu, you are really good at distorting right and wrong. If you had not purposely made things difficult for me and ordered those generals to attack me, why would I have made a move? If not for your orders, would those generals have dared to attack me? Now, I am the one who harmed my own kind. You are even slandering me as a spy of the demon race. I think that a vermin and trash like you is the greatest hidden danger of the Heavenly Lion Pass. You are an eternal sinner of the White Frost Empire." Yu Fu's words were sharp, but Ji Tianqing did not show any mercy. His words were even harsher and more vicious. Vermin, trash, eternal sinner, and other such terms angered Yu Fu to the point that his face turned ashen and his body trembled. Ji Tianqing. Yu Fu roared and pointed at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression. He shouted coldly, "You are such an audacious madman. You really don't know what is good for you. You are arrogant to the extreme. Ben Shuai is the hero who guarded the Heavenly Lion Pass, but you slandered him like this. In front of everyone, Ben Shuai will not talk nonsense with you anymore. Draw your sword. Ben Shuai wants to see how capable you are. Who is the real trash?" The time was ripe. Yu Fu's anger had reached its peak and turned into killing intent. His whole body emitted a dark red murderous aura. He rushed into the sky like a rainbow and locked onto Ji Tianqing's aura with his divine sense. He could unleash a thunderous attack at any time and kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. Ji Tianqing was not afraid. He sneered and said, "You are not worthy for me to draw my sword. You are courting death." Yu Fu was so angry that he could no longer suppress his killing intent. He waved his palms and attacked Ji Tianqing. Mountain-splitting palm. Yu Fu's palm struck out two golden palm shadows. It was as if they were splitting the sky and earth. They slashed toward Ji Tianqing. The dark night sky was immediately illuminated by the golden light. The white clouds and thick fog in the night sky were also dispersed by the formless energy. All the soldiers on the mountain peak looked up at the night sky with excited and expectant expressions. In everyone's eyes, Deputy Commander Yu had personally made a move. This time, Ji Tianqing was dead meat. However, Ji Tianqing was still very calm. He calmly raised his palms and attacked Yu Fu. He did not dodge at all. He chose to face Yu Fu head-on. Star-shattering fist. Two silver fist shadows struck out and collided with the giant golden palm shadows. There was an earth-shattering explosion. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the mountain-splitting palm shattered with a bang, turning into golden light that scattered everywhere. The silver fist shadow's power did not diminish and hit Yu Fu instantly. Bang! In the explosion, Yu Fu's body trembled and he was pushed back 100 feet before he stopped. Although he had the sacred armor to protect his body, he was not injured by Ji Tianqing. However, in front of everyone's eyes, he had been pushed back by Ji Tianqing. He could not even take one blow from Ji Tianqing. This was too humiliating and it was out of everyone's expectations. Yu Fu was so angry that his face turned white. His heart was filled with shame and anger. The soldiers who were watching the battle at the top of the mountain were also dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with horror as they widened their eyes and exclaimed in surprise. "Oh my God! Am I seeing things? Deputy Commander Yu was pushed back by that kid? How is that possible? Has that kid reached the martial sage realm? This is too unbelievable. Deputy Commander Yu is an ancestor martial sage. How old is that kid? He is so young. If he has really broken through to the martial sage realm, it would definitely shock the world. Why is there no news at all? No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. He even dares to insult Deputy Commander Yu. It turns out that he is really capable. Many soldiers were discussing among themselves. Their voices were like a flood that exploded and reverberated around the mountain peak. Yu Fu heard it clearly and he felt even more humiliated. He waved his palm again and used his secret skill to attack Ji Tianqing. Shadowless Diffraction Sword. Chapter 2067. The giant sword pierced through the air as fast as a flash of light. Before the sword arrived, the formless sword intent had already enveloped a radius of 100 miles, ruthlessly suppressing Ji Tianqing. The razor-sharp sword Qi sliced the night sky apart, leaving cracks in its wake. This sword was terrifyingly powerful and had a shocking momentum. The sword was so fast that even a shadow could not be formed. It was as if it could cut the moonlight in half. This was how the Shadowless Diffraction Sword got its name. The soldiers on the mountain peak were dazzled when they saw Yu Fu use his ultimate sword technique. They were full of admiration and worship. However, Ji Tianqing was disdainful and scoffed. You dare to show off such a clumsy sword technique before an expert? I'll let you see what the true way of the sword is. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing put his left hand behind his back and pointed at Yu Fu with his right hand. Shattering Sun Sword. A 300-meter-long, dazzling golden sword slashed at the shadowless fractional light sword. The two giant swords were both dazzling gold, but there was a huge difference in size and aura. Compared to the dazzling shattering sun sword, the shadowless diffraction sword seemed especially weak. Kaboom! Amidst the deafening sound, the two giant swords collided and exploded with a golden light that covered the sky. It was as dazzling as the sun. The 1,000-foot-long shadowless diffraction sword was shattered on the spot. The 1,000-foot-long shattering sun sword was not damaged at all. It was still divine and dazzling. Bang! The shattering sun sword's power did not decrease. It hit Yu Fu with a loud bang. Yu Fu was sent flying backward on the spot. He rolled and fell into the distant night sky. Fortunately, he was wearing a divine armor and Ji Tianqing did not use the sword of burial of heaven, so he was not seriously injured. Even so, his robe was torn and tattered, and there was a dent on his armor. His helmet was also crooked, revealing his messy hair. He looked a little pathetic. Yu Fu flew backward for a full 10 miles before he dissipated the force of the impact and stopped in the night sky. His face was as pale as paper. His chest rose and fell rapidly. He panted for a while before he could circulate his magic power smoothly. Dense shock and rage filled his heart and mind, causing him to be unable to restrain his rage, shame, and indignation. How is this possible? His attainment in the way of the sword is stronger than Benshuai's. Benshuai is an ancestor-level martial sage, but he is so young, how can there be such a monster in the world? Yu Fu lowered his head and looked at the dent on his chest armor. His eyes widened in disbelief as he muttered hoarsely. All along, he had great power and influence, and he could be said to be in high spirits. Until tonight, he'd suffered repeated setbacks, and he'd been repeatedly humiliated by a young junior, causing him to be battered to the point he was covered in wounds. And he could not accept this fact. His cheeks were red and hot, the blood in his body was burning, and the flames of anger were surging in his chest. His fists were clenched tightly, and his 10 fingers were cracking. However, when he saw the situation clearly, his face became even uglier. The soldiers on the mountain peak all stared at Ji Tianqing in the night sky with their mouths agape. Their eyes were filled with shock and admiration. Many people let out exclamations of surprise as they discussed excitedly. Unbelievable. This person's strength is so terrifying. Martial Yu is an experienced martial sage. He can't even block one of his moves. After exchanging 2 blows in a row, he was still no match for Ji Tianqing and was even sent flying dozens of miles away. Is this still our Martial Yu? How can there be such a monster in the world? You can imagine how high this person's prestige is in Luotian Mountain. It's over. Martial Yu has a grudge with this person. This person is so monstrous. He must be highly regarded by the Divine Master. Martial Yu's situation is worrying. Yu Fu was angry and ashamed. When he heard the discussion of the soldiers, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. The soldiers were shocked and they saw this scene. Ah! Martial Yu is injured. Martial Yu was seriously injured by Ji Tianqing to the point of vomiting blood. Martial Yu lost so miserably. I'm afraid he won't be able to raise his head in front of Ji Tianqing in the future. Countless soldiers were discussing and worried about Yu Fu's situation. How can Ji Tianqing let go of this opportunity to ridicule Yu Fu? Vice Marshal Yu, who is the trash? The result is clear. You are an old man who takes advantage of your seniority. You don't have any real ability but only know how to play tricks. How can you lead millions of soldiers to victory? Ji Tianqing's voice spread through the night sky and the soldiers on the 2 mountain peaks heard it clearly. On the eastern mountain peak, the soldiers under Yu Fu are filled with anger and humiliation but they are powerless to refute. On the western mountain peak, the soldiers on the western mountain peak find it funny and are excitedly watching a good show. Yu Fu has lost all his face. He is so angry that he can no longer maintain his rationality. His eyes are covered with a layer of red. Light flashed in his palm and a dazzling golden sword appeared. Ji Tianqing. This old man has no enmity with you, but you humiliate this old man like this. This old man will not rest until you die. As he spoke, Yu Fu's body bloomed with scarlet flames and his aura climbed to the peak. He doesn't care about anything else. He just wants to use all his strength to kill Ji Tianqing with his sword to vent the hatred in his heart and regain his face. Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile and said in a contemptuous tone, "This seat said just now, don't use sword skills in front of this seat. That is asking to be humiliated. Ji Tianqing, I will kill you." Yu Fu's anger surged as he roared at the top of his lungs. He held the golden sword with both hands and slashed at Ji Tianqing. Dragon soaring to the 9th heaven. With a wave of the golden holy sword, 2 golden dragon shadows soared into the sky and let out dragon roars that pierced through gold and cracked stone. Ong! The 2 golden dragons rushed into the night sky, illuminating a radius of hundreds of miles. Their power was terrifying to the extreme. The golden dragons swooped down from the sky, carrying the power to destroy everything, and fiercely bombarded Ji Tianqing. In the face of such a destructive attack, Ji Tianqing could only use the Burial of Heaven sword to block it. But he stood in the same place, motionless, and had no intention of fighting back. He looked at Yu Fu with a playful gaze and a smile at the corner of his mouth. He seemed to have a card up his sleeve and was very wise. In the next moment, the 2 golden dragons were about to hit Ji Tianqing. A crisp, cold, angry shout suddenly rang out in the night sky. Stop! As this majestic cold shout sounded, a giant golden palm the size of a mountain suddenly tore through the night sky and grabbed at the 2 golden dragons. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the giant golden palm grabbed the 2 golden dragon phantoms and crushed them. Boom! Golden fragments fell from the sky and drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. He stood in the night sky with a calm expression, bathed in the snowflake-like golden fragments, with a calm, confident, and proud posture. Such a scene caused countless officers and soldiers to be dumbstruck, and they were filled with shock and admiration. Chapter 2068. The golden light fragments scattered in the night sky, and the giant golden palm dissipated. A white light flew from afar and arrived at the top of the mountain. After the white light dissipated, 5 figures appeared. 4 of them were tall men in armor. They were at the 6th or 7th level of the crossing Calamity Realm. The 4 of them were obviously the generals of Sky Lion Pass. However, they were not the generals under Yu Fu's command. They came from the West Mountain. The leader was a young woman in a white palace dress. She had a slim figure. She was 7 feet tall and wore an exquisite palace dress. She wore a crown with a golden one phoenix gem inlaid with jade. She exuded a noble and elegant aura. She was so powerful that people could only look at her from afar and did not dare to have any blasphemous thoughts. Her face was exquisite and beautiful, but it was not seductive at all. She had a cold and majestic aura. It was obvious that she was the one who had crushed the 2 golden dragons with the giant golden palm. She stood proudly in the night sky and looked down at everyone. There was a hint of anger between her eyebrows. She exuded a cold aura. In an instant, the entire mountain peak fell silent. Countless soldiers looked up at the sky, their faces filled with awe and veneration. After being stunned for a moment, everyone bowed in unison and shouted respectfully, "Welcome, Holy Emperor." There was no doubt that the beautiful woman in the palace dress was the Holy Emperor of the Kingdom of Baishuang, Lu Baishuang. Yu Fu, who was originally angry, suddenly changed his expression when he saw Lu Baishuang. He quickly suppressed his anger and flew in front of Lu Baishuang. He bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Holy Emperor." Holy Emperor Baishuang glanced at him expressionlessly. Then, she looked at Ji Tianqing, who was not far away. She couldn't help but frown when she saw Ji Tianqing standing in the night sky with an indifferent expression. He didn't show the slightest bit of respect, nor did he show any signs of bowing. "Who are you? Why are you fighting in my Sky Lion Pass?" When Ji Tianqing heard her words and saw her expression, he guessed that she already knew the inside story. He asked this question even though he already knew the answer. If Lu Baishuang really treated him as an enemy, there was no need to stop Yu Fu. He could just kill him directly. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing smiled faintly and said, "Holy Emperor Baishuang is extremely intelligent. Why do you need to ask me? As for the reason, you can ask Deputy Commander Yu." Yu Fu was full of anger and wanted to complain to Lu Baishuang. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, he sneered in his heart. "Humph! Damned brat, you asked for it." Hence, Yu Fu hurriedly clasped his hands and reporting to the Saint Emperor, "This person is called Ji Tianqing. He claims to be a disciple of the Luotian mountain range. The moment he arrived at the Heavenly Lion Pass, he requested to see you. He claimed that he was ordered by the Divine Lord to be the deputy commander of the Heavenly Lion Pass." The Saint Emperor was far away in White Mountain City dealing with government affairs. How busy was he? How could anyone meet him? Of course, I didn't believe it, so I sent someone to send him away. Yu Fu recounted the events that happened previously from beginning to end. Of course, if he changed his statement slightly, he would make himself an innocent person and cast away all the responsibility. As for Ji Tianqing, he became a lawless, cruel and tyrannical villain. Lu Baishuang listened to his narration without any expression. Occasionally, he would glance at Ji Tianqing's reaction. Ji Tianqing only listened calmly without any intention to argue. After Yu Fu finished, he pointed at Ji Tianqing and said to Lu Baishuang, "Saint Emperor, fortunately you came in time. Otherwise, this person would have injured me and destroyed the entire Heavenly Lion Pass. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable." Lu Baishuang looked at Ji Tianqing calmly and asked, "Ji Tianqing, is what Yu Fu said true?" Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully, "Right or wrong, Saint Emperor Baishuang naturally knows the answer in your heart. Why bother asking? The truth of the matter is clear to the generals around you. Why don't you ask them? Yu Fu's expression changed immediately. He pointed at him and shouted, "Ji Tianqing! How dare you be so disrespectful to Lord Saint Emperor? Men, take this arrogant person down." Originally, he was worried that Ji Tianqing would cry and plead to Lu Baishuang, and this matter would be left unsettled. But he didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be so arrogant. He didn't even put Lu Baishuang in his eyes. This was exactly what he wanted, and he was very pleased with himself. However, when he gave the order, no one dared to move. Yu Fu was embarrassed. Lu Baishuang turned to look at Yu Fu. His expression gradually turned cold, and he shouted in a dignified tone, "Deputy Commander Yu, Ji Tianqing is a disciple of Luotian Mountain, the #1 god disciple of Luotian Kingdom. In terms of status, he can stand shoulder to shoulder with this emperor. Even if he is disrespectful, it is understandable. If you are so eager to convict him, what do you think of this emperor?" Ah! Yu Fu was dumbfounded. He stared at Lu Baishuang with wide eyes. He didn't expect that Ji Tianqing wouldn't say a word, but Lu Baishuang would take the initiative to defend him. Yu Fu came back to his senses and hurriedly said, "Saint Emperor, even if Ji Tianqing's status is noble, he is truly lawless and cruel. He injured so many soldiers." Before he could finish, Lu Baishuang shouted angrily, "Shut up. Deputy Commander Yu, in front of so many people, you still want to distort the truth. What exactly happened? Don't tell me you still need this emperor to repeat it." Yu Fu's expression became even uglier, but he was unwilling. He pointed at Ji Tianqing and said, "But Saint Emperor, he injured so many soldiers and destroyed the entire scout camp. This is the truth." Lu Baishuang's eyes became colder and colder. He shouted in a dignified tone, "Deputy Commander Yu. If you didn't deliberately suppress and frame Ji Tianqing, how could he have retaliated? Many soldiers were injured, and the scout camp was destroyed. It was all because of you. Before this emperor left, I told you that Ji Tianqing was about to arrive at Sky Lion Pass. I told you to receive him well and hand over the military affairs. There can be no mistakes. What about you? Is this the explanation you gave to this emperor? Is this how you completed the mission I gave you? Yu Fu, you have disappointed this emperor too much." Lu Baishuang's voice spread throughout the entire area, shaking the night sky. An invisible pressure enveloped the entire Sky Lion Pass. The million soldiers heard it clearly, and their hearts were filled with awe. They didn't dare to make any noise. Yu Fu's expression was also extremely ugly. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He shouted in his heart, "How can this be? That brat is so arrogant that he didn't even bother to explain. Lu Baishuang didn't dare to criticize him and even reprimand me in front of everyone." Yu Fu couldn't understand. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. At this moment, something happened that made his eyes pop out. Lu Baishuang walked in front of Ji Tianqing and bowed in a dignified manner. He said with an apologetic face, "Young Master Ji, this emperor was busy with government affairs and neglected to receive you. This caused this misunderstanding. I feel very guilty and uneasy. Please forgive me, young Master Ji." Chapter 2069. The dignified Holy Emperor of the White Frost Empire actually bowed to Ji Tianqing and apologized. This was simply unheard of. Not only was Yu Fu dumbstruck, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers were also filled with shock, their eyeballs dropping to the ground. In everyone's mind, the same thought emerged. What is this Ji Tianqing's background? Even the Holy Emperor has to give him some face. Everyone was dumbfounded. Luotian Mountain's eldest disciple, Luoshui Divine Kingdom's #1 god disciple, was he really so noble and unparalleled? No matter how noble he was not a martial saint after all. How could he be mentioned in the same breath as Holy Emperor Whitefrost? How could Holy Emperor Whitefrost reprimand the ancestor-level Marshal Saint Yu Fu in public for him? No one could understand. In everyone's view, Deputy Commander Yu was beaten until he was seriously injured and even reprimanded by the Holy Emperor. It was incomparably humiliating. Ji Tianqing made a mistake but gained all the advantages and was even praised by Holy Emperor Whitefrost like this. It was truly inconceivable. He should also quit while he was ahead and go along with Holy Emperor Whitefrost's intention, take advantage of the situation and end this matter. But something that everyone did not expect happened. Ji Tianqing shot a glance at Holy Emperor Whitefrost and actually laughed coldly. Lu Baishuang, you raised it up high and put it down lightly, and you want to end this matter? How can a narrow-minded and short-sighted guy like Yu Fu command a million army? How can he possibly resist the fiend race? You reprimanded him with a few words like this, aren't you protecting him? Ji Tianqing's voice reverberated throughout the entire place, making countless soldiers dumbfounded, shocked until their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. My God! Is that guy crazy? He actually did not give any face to Holy Emperor Whitefrost at all. Even Holy Emperor is not in his eyes. Not only did he not have any respect, he directly called Holy Emperor Whitefrost's name and even reprimanded Holy Emperor Whitefrost for protecting Yu Fu. Seriously too arrogant. Even if Luotian Mountain's Granny Long came, she would also not be so impolite. It's over. Lord Holy Emperor already gave him enough face, but he still wants to court death. Looks like this grudge can't be resolved. He and Deputy Commander Yu Fu will not rest until one is dead. Countless officers and soldiers were whispering to each other, discussing in secret. Everyone's expression and eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Ji Tianqing's arrogance was beyond everyone's imagination. It was an eye-opener. Yu Fu was stunned for a moment. Soon after, he revealed a sinister cold smile. His heart was incomparably carefree. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing, oh Ji Tianqing, this is your own death, you can't blame anyone else. Lu Baishuang was also startled. Furrowing her brow, she asked in a low voice, Young Master Ji, the demon race's army is eyeing us like a tiger watching its prey. We must prioritize the overall situation. I hope you can understand my concerns. Don't blow this matter up. It won't do anyone any good. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said sternly, that's right. You are the master of the White Frost Empire. Of course, you have to consider the big picture. But why should I endure? Of course, I know that you have to consider the big picture and have many concerns. There are also power struggles within the White Frost Empire that must be carefully resolved. But what does this have to do with me? My time is precious. I don't want to waste a single day on these useless trash. After I help you deal with the demon race's army outside the pass, I still have to rush to the other battlefronts to help the other commanders. Once these words came out, everyone was shocked. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one dared to believe that Ji Tianqing was arrogant to such an extent. He dared to criticize Holy Emperor Baishuang in front of her face and even called the soldiers useless trash. For a moment, the two peaks were silent for a long time. Then, the soldiers came back to their senses and burst into angry roars and curses. Despicable fellow, he is too arrogant. How dare he insult the Holy Emperor and the millions of soldiers of the Heavenly Lion Pass? We will fight it out with you. How can there be such a savage and arrogant person in this world? He is too lawless. Our Heavenly Lion Pass does not need such an arrogant and conceited fellow. Holy Emperor, please understand. We will not accept this person as our deputy commander. Similar discussions and angry roars rang out one after another on the mountain peak. Lu Baishuang's expression was very ugly, and her eyes were gloomy like ice. But she kept silent, weighing the pros and cons in her heart, and did not speak. As early as half a month ago, Granny Long had sent her messages many times, repeatedly reminding her about this matter. Of course, she knew that Luo Shui martial god was in seclusion and could not appear to fight against the demon race. Only a divine soul avatar had been destroyed by the ancestor fiend god after causing havoc in North Underworld Mountain. Now, Luo Shui martial god had high hopes for Ji Tianqing, so he sent him to the north to participate in the battle against the demon race's army. Lu Baishuang naturally knew that Ji Tianqing was not lying. He was indeed here to help. He did not care about the position of Heavenly Lion Pass's deputy commander. After he helped Heavenly Lion Pass repel the demon race, he would go to the other passes to help the other commanders resist the demon race. Because of this, Lu Baishuang's attitude towards Ji Tianqing was respectful and courteous. Even when Ji Tianqing caused havoc in Heavenly Lion Pass and injured more than 100 soldiers, she did not reprimand him. She only wanted to keep the peace. But she never thought that Ji Tianqing's personality would be so arrogant that he would embarrass her in front of everyone, making it difficult for her to choose. Even the million soldiers of Heavenly Lion Pass were infuriated by Ji Tianqing. Under the agitation of the crowd, she found it difficult to absolve Ji Tianqing. After a while, Lu Baishuang waved her hand, indicating for the soldiers to quiet down. When everyone quieted down, she looked at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes and asked, "Young Master Ji, this emperor can understand your feelings. I know that you have been wronged and feel indignant. But you should also understand that as a commander, you must be tolerant." Before she could finish, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "Lu Baishuang, you don't need to persuade me anymore. I understand these principles better than you. I will tell you clearly now that I will not work with that filthy old thing Yu Fu. Heavenly Lion Pass only needs one deputy commander. You can either let him stay or kick him out." "What?" Lu Baishuang was also dumbfounded. She stared at him, dumbfounded. Countless soldiers in the field were once again petrified by Ji Tianqing. Everyone's horizons were broadened, and they finally understood how arrogant a person could be. Yu Fu was so angry that his white hair fluttered in the wind, his beard trembled, and his whole body trembled. His blood and qi surged, rushing straight to his face and head. He was so angry that he almost fainted. "Ji Tianqing! You thief, this old man wants to tear you into pieces." Yu Fu pointed his trembling finger at Ji Tianqing and cursed in a hoarse voice. Many generals and commanders also cursed with righteous indignation. They asked Lu Baishuang to drive Ji Tianqing away and not accept him. Chapter 2070. Lu Baishuang was indeed in a dilemma. She understood the situation in the Luo Shui divine kingdom, so she did not dare to disobey the orders of the Luo Shui martial god. She wanted to keep Ji Tianqing here. However, Ji Tianqing's arrogance had broken through the sky and refreshed everyone's vision, causing countless soldiers to feel disgusted. If she insisted on keeping Ji Tianqing here, it would only cause dissatisfaction among the soldiers, and even affect the unity of the army, which would lead to a disaster. Lu Baishuang cast a look at Ji Tianqing, urging him to stay, and secretly transmitted her voice, "Young Master Ji, why do you have to make things difficult for this empress? As long as you change your words, this empress will punish Yu Fu severely and give you justice after today's matter is over." As the holy emperor of the White Frost Empire, the famous empress, Lu Baishuang had done everything she could. It was all for the sake of Granny Long and the Luo Shui martial god that she tolerated Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was well aware of this, so he no longer made things difficult for Lu Baishuang. He turned his head to look at Yu Fu and the other generals. Yu Fu was looking at him with a cold smile on his face, looking very satisfied and proud, as if victory was already in his hands. Hundreds of generals also supported Yu Fu, shouting with indignation. Ji Tianqing's face was solemn, and he shouted in a vigorous voice, "Silence." His voice was like a thunderclap, shaking the area for hundreds of miles. The sound wave contained an invisible soul-suppressing power, which enveloped the entire Sky Lion Pass. Instantly, hundreds of thousands of soldiers quieted down, no longer daring to talk or make noise. Ji Tianqing looked at Yu Fu and the other generals with sharp eyes, and said in a low and dignified voice, "This seat knows that you are not convinced by calling you useless trash." Yu Fu sneered and said in a voice like a bell, "Of course. Ben Shuai and the other generals are all warriors who have been in hundreds of battles. They have guarded Sky Lion Pass for more than half a year, and they have contributed a lot. We have protected the territory of the White Frost Empire for the people, and we have shed our blood. We are all meritorious officials. How can we allow you to slander us? You're just a flower in a greenhouse, a brat who hasn't experienced any hardships. What qualifications do you have to insult the soldiers?" These impassioned words immediately caused hundreds of generals to nod in agreement. Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully, pointed at Yu Fu and shouted, "Good. Since you consider yourselves heroes who have performed meritorious deeds and are not to be slandered, then why don't you give it to us? Then let me ask you, how many times have you fought with the devil army? How many devils have you killed?" Yu Fu raised his head and puffed out his chest, replying proudly, "Ben Shuai has fought with the demon army more than 20 times head-on and 8 times in secret, killing a total of more than 30,000 demons. Among them, there are more than a dozen devil generals and dozens of commanders. They are all elite experts and experts of the devil race." Ji Tianqing did not comment and looked at the generals behind Yu Fu. "What battle merits did you guys have?" The generals all showed proud expressions as they puffed out their chests and said in an excited tone, "This general fought 21 battles with the demon race and personally killed over 10,000 of them. This general led the Vanguard Battalion and fought 18 battles with the demon race, killing more than 8,000 of them. This general killed more than 5,000 of them and suffered more than 30 injuries, escaping from death 3 times. As Ji Tianqing's gaze moved, every general who was stared at by him reported their battle merits in a loud voice. Every general felt proud from the bottom of their hearts, and the surrounding soldiers also showed admiration and even applauded them. For a full quarter of an hour, Ji Tianqing did not say a word, only listening to the 100 generals report their battle merits. Lu Baishuang stood beside him and frowned at him, not knowing what he wanted to do. Finally, the 100 generals by Yu Fu's side finished reporting their battle merits. Ji Tianqing then showed a disdainful sneer and said in a vigorous voice, "Very good. Including Deputy Commander Yu, there are a total of more than 120 generals, all of whom have battle merits. This seat has calculated, the 100 of you together have killed a total of 210,000 devils. Among them, the strongest are more than 10 Tribulation Realm generals, and more than 100 Tribulation Realm and Primordial Spirit Realm commanders. Just based on these battle merits, you all think that you are loyal and courageous officials who have worked hard, and are very complacent and proud. This seat scolded you all as vermin, useless trash, and you all are very angry and unconvinced." Yu Fu sneered proudly, "Of course. Even if we are not as strong as you, we have personally killed the demon race and bathed in blood on the battlefield. Unlike you, a lawless madman who only knows how to be arrogant, but has no military merits." The 100 or so generals around him all roared with laughter, looking very pleased with themselves. Ji Tianqing also laughed. He looked at Yu Fu with pity and shouted in a cold voice, "Deputy Commander Yu, please open your dog eyes and look carefully." When his voice fell, he waved his hand and a silver light screen appeared, hanging in the dark night sky. In the huge light screen that was 3,000 feet in length and width, a magnificent scene immediately appeared. Under the rolling black clouds in the sky was a boundless wasteland. The ground had long been dyed purple with blood, and there were piles of white bones and corpses everywhere. The endless demon race army surged like a black tide, carrying with it the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, and charged at the impregnable pass. At a glance, the demon race army was at least several million in number, making one's scalp tingle. At this time, a human youth in white, holding a mysterious black sword, charged at the million-strong demon race army alone. He stepped on the stars, waved his sword, and used a secret technique that could destroy the heavens and the earth. There were giant swords that could split the heavens and the earth, heavenly fire that was like a flood, and violent hurricanes and lightning that wreaked havoc in the demon race army. Thousands of devil race soldiers would be smashed into smithereens with each strike of the secret technique. When the white-clothed youth used his secret technique, it was even more destructive, killing 100,000 demons in one move. Such a terrifying power was like a god of death descending to the world, punishing with the wrath of the heavens. The scene was very lifelike, making Lu Baishuang, Yu Fu, and the soldiers on the mountain peak feel as if they were in the same situation. The scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, an incomparably tragic scene, made everyone's eyes widen, their hearts tremble, and a chill run down their backs. No one had ever seen such a tragic battle that was like hell. The unparalleled power of the white-clothed youth was deeply imprinted in everyone's soul, and they could not forget it. Many soldiers were in awe, and they felt a strong sense of awe and worship towards the white-clothed youth. However, Lu Baishuang and Yu Fu's expressions changed. It was because both of them were able to discern that the white-clothed young man who was like a god of slaughter was Ji Tianqing. Lu Baishuang suddenly understood, and her wrinkled brows relaxed, and her mind calmed down. One person slaughtering 1.5 million demons. You're talking about a heavenly book. Even if there were 1.5 million cows, you wouldn't be able to kill them all. More than 20 generals questioned Ji Tianqing's words one after another. However, they were obviously not confident enough. After they finished speaking, no one responded. The soldiers around the mountain peak all maintained their silence, their expressions solemn. Ji Tianqing didn't bother to explain, nor did he bother to pay attention to those generals. He continued, because of this, I am the one who understands the demons the most in this world. The origin of the demons, their race's characteristics and talents, as well as their weaknesses and all kinds of demonic methods, I am very clear about them. A year ago, I gathered all my life's experience into a demon-resisting record and asked Granny Long to distribute it to the northern battlefield for the soldiers to read. Hearing this, Lu Baishuang's eyes became brighter, and a hint of a smile flashed in his eyes. Yu Fu and the generals' faces changed dramatically again, revealing an incomparably shocked expression. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the Heavenly Lion Pass revealed a look of realization, and they began to discuss excitedly. Oh my God! So he is the one who compiled the demon-resisting record. I see. No wonder when I heard Ji Tianqing's name before, I felt that it was somewhat familiar, as if I had heard it somewhere before. Ever since we learned the demon-resisting record, it has become easier to deal with the demon army, and the number of casualties has been decreasing. This is all thanks to Ji Tianqing's contribution. Ji Tianqing's demon-resisting record allowed the 30 million soldiers in the north to learn how to deal with the demons. This is definitely a great contribution. No wonder he could compile the demon-resisting record. Looks like he really fought with the demons for many years and killed 1.5 million of them with his own hands. In an instant, hundreds of thousands of generals were discussing Ji Tianqing, and they were full of respect and admiration for him. Naturally, the fact that he had killed 1 million demons became an ironclad fact, and no one dared to question it anymore. By now, everyone understood why God Luo Shui had sent Ji Tianqing to the Heavenly Lion Pass. He could really help the Kingdom of White Frost defeat the demon army. Only when he was the deputy commander could he lead the million soldiers in the Heavenly Lion Pass to victory. When Yu Fu saw the reactions of the soldiers, his expression turned ugly, and his heart clenched. It's over. Ji Tianqing's achievements and contributions far exceeded Ben Shuai's, and he had already shocked everyone. This damned bastard. He actually turned the tables and easily resolved everyone's anger and disgust. He even won the respect of the soldiers. A strong sense of danger made Yu Fu uneasy, and he could not help but plead with Lu Baishuang. However, Ji Tianqing's performance was not over yet. There were even more heaven-defying achievements that had not been shown yet. Swoosh! He waved his hand and shot out another ray of white light, which entered the huge silver light screen. Instantly, another scene appeared on the light screen. In a dark wasteland, a handsome and valiant young man in white was fighting with a giant beast that was pitch black all over. That pitch black beast was 30 meters tall and had sharp wings and a tail hook. Its appearance was ferocious and terrifying, and its aura was terrifyingly powerful. After the two sides exchanged a few moves, Ji Tianqing destroyed it with his sword, and it collapsed and dissipated on the spot. Ji Tianqing looked down at the soldiers and introduced solemnly, "Half a year ago, I fought with the new demon Saint Ji Xiulua and killed him on the spot." However, the leader of the demon race taught Ji Xiulua an ancient secret technique as his life-saving trump card. Ji Xiulua is not really dead, and he will be resurrected in the North Underworld Mountain within 10 years and recover his strength. Ji Tianqing did not mention the heavenly demon jade seed technique, and the soldiers did not understand anyway. Only Lu Baishuang heard the clues, and looked at Ji Tianqing with deep meaning, and thought to himself, it was really him who killed him. The new demon Saint Ji Xiulua did not even have time to lead the army before he was killed by him, and only a wisp of his soul was left. He is really the most tragic demon saint. At this time, Ji Tianqing waved his hand again and shot out another ray of white light. The scene on the silver light screen changed again. It was a pitch-black void, and Ji Tianqing was fighting with Ancestor Xue Pao. Ancestor Xue Pao had been refined into an extreme demon weapon, and was almost immortal. The two sides fought for a long time, and at the last critical moment, Ji Tianqing used the god-slaying spear and killed the heavily injured Ancestor Xue Pao on the spot. The magnificent view of the void and the colorful lights and shadows made countless soldiers dazzled, and their hearts filled with worship and reverence. Chapter 2072. Ji Tianqing's voice reverberated throughout the entire Sky Lion Pass. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were shocked. Their hearts were filled with reverence and worship. To them, the attack of 1.5 million demonic race soldiers was enough to put the Heavenly Lion Pass on the brink of destruction, and it would be broken through in an instant. However, Ji Tianqing had single-handedly slaughtered millions of demons. Patriarch Xue Pao and Demon Saint Azura were notorious demons who had slaughtered countless lives. Their names struck fear into the hearts of the soldiers of the divine nation. Even Deputy Commander Yu and Holy Emperor Bai Shuang might not be able to defeat the two demon saints. However, Ji Tianqing had killed Demon Saint Azura and Patriarch Xue Pao. He had displayed his invincible prowess, causing even the ferocious demon saints to feel fear and despair. What kind of shocking battle record was this? What kind of legendary god of slaughter was he? To be able to fight side by side with such a peerless genius, a legendary killing god, against the demon race, that was the honor of every soldier. Previously, Ji Tianqing had criticized Holy Emperor Bai Shuang, saying that his time was precious and he did not want to waste it on useless trash. At that time, everyone was filled with indignation and wanted to chase Ji Tianqing away. They would never accept him. Now, it seemed that the combined merits of all the generals present could not be compared to Ji Tianqing alone. Compared to Ji Tianqing, Deputy Commander Yu and the other generals were truly useless trash. Ji Tianqing had also said that he would help the Sky Lion Pass defeat the demons before helping the other generals. At that time, no one believed him. They all thought that he was arrogant and ignorant like a madman. However, it seemed that he could definitely lead the soldiers to defeat the demons and defend the Sky Lion Pass. No one doubted his words anymore. The hundreds of thousands of soldiers had forgotten about Deputy Commander Yu's existence. All their attention was on Ji Tianqing. Everyone was very excited. They only wanted Ji Tianqing to stay and lead them out of the Sky Lion Pass. They wanted to slaughter the demons outside the pass. As a soldier, who did not want to make contributions and become famous? Not to mention a legend like Ji Tianqing, if they could achieve 1% of his battle record, they would be qualified to be a great hero. For a moment, the atmosphere and the situation in the field changed. Those officers and soldiers who were just watching the show all turned to Ji Tianqing and were extremely respectful and worshipful of him. Even most of the soldiers under Yu Fu's command had changed their minds and were wavering. Lu Baishuang saw all of this and couldn't help but smile. He sighed in his heart, no wonder Granny Long repeatedly told me to protect Ji Tianqing and listen to his arrangements and instructions. At that time, I was still unconvinced. But now, Ji Tianqing is truly a rare genius, a dragon or phoenix among the heroes of the world. At the same time, Ji Tianqing continued in a calm tone, I was ordered to join the war in the north and serve as the deputy commander of the Sky Lion Pass. It is your honor, and the fortune of the people of the White Frost Empire. My time was precious, so I didn't want to bother myself with the schemes of some despicable people. I just want to destroy the demonic army in the shortest time possible and restore peace and tranquility to the Empire of White Frost. And some people can be complacent with such a pitiful battle record, and claim to be loyal and brave officials who have worked hard for a long time. Isn't that ridiculous? I call you useless trash. Do you accept that? If Ji Tianqing didn't show off his battle record and strength before, the soldiers wouldn't be convinced and would make a big fuss. But now, when he asked this question from a commanding position, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers fell silent, not daring to answer. The soldiers who had been making a ruckus earlier all lowered their heads in shame. They were so embarrassed that they wanted to die. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked again in a dignified tone, "Are you convinced?" The soldiers were silent for a while, then someone mustered up the courage to answer, "Yes." Ji Tianqing raised his voice and asked in an even more dignified tone, "Are you convinced?" This time, countless soldiers answered in unison, "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, "That's good. If you want to wash away this shameful title, you have to go to the battlefield and kill the enemy, and make more contributions. I will lead you to fight against the demonic army, slaughter the demonic army, and win victory in peace. Do you want to be a warrior who returns victorious, a hero in the hearts of the people?" His voice spread throughout the Sky Lion Pass, and made the blood of hundreds of thousands of soldiers boil. Countless people raised their arms and shouted, "Yes." Ji Tianqing said in a dignified tone, "Louder." Hundreds of thousands of soldiers raised their weapons and shouted hoarsely, "Yes." The powerful sound waves resounded in the sky above the Sky Lion Pass, shaking the two huge mountains. At this moment, the blood of the 1,000,000 soldiers in the Sky Lion Pass was boiling, and their morale was soaring. Lu Baishuang finally showed a smile. She looked at Ji Tianqing with her clear and bright eyes, and there was a strong sense of appreciation in her eyes. No wonder Granny Long treats him like a nephew, and the Divine Master trusts him unconditionally. This person was truly a worldly talent, a monstrous genius that had never been seen before. Although I am the ruler of the White Frost Empire, and hundreds of millions of people respect me, I can't do this. But this emperor can't be like him, turning the situation around in just an hour and making those who look down on him become his fans and worshippers. With him in charge of the Sky Lion Pass, victory is in sight. The four generals behind Lu Baishuang also showed gratified smiles, and they admired and praised Ji Tianqing very much. Not far away, Yu Fu's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, gloomy as ice, and his eyes were full of disappointment and despair. He knew very well that he had lost the confrontation with Ji Tianqing. He had lost completely, and he had been utterly defeated. This damn bastard, with just a few words, he incited hundreds of thousands of soldiers to support him. How did this despicable bastard do it? Yu Fu was an ancestor-level expert, and he certainly knew how Ji Tianqing had done it. However, The blow of failure was too great, and he could not believe or accept such a frustrating result. After a long time, the shouts that resounded through the sky finally dissipated. Ji Tianqing waved his sleeve and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, remember what you said tonight. Soon, you will be proud of your choice." After saying that, he looked at Yu Fu with disdain, and turned to look at Lu Baishuang beside him, and said in a calm voice, "Lu Baishuang, you do as you see fit." His attitude towards Lu Baishuang was as casual as ever, without the slightest respect. However, no one felt that it was inappropriate, and they felt that it was natural. Lu Baishuang took a step forward, looked at Yu Fu with a dignified face, and announced loudly, "From today onwards, Yu Fu will be removed from the position of deputy commander, and will be transferred to White Mountain City to take charge of internal affairs." With a simple sentence, Yu Fu was reduced from a noble deputy commander to a small official in the rear of the city. The difference in status could be said to be the difference between clouds and mud. Such a huge drop made Yu Fu feel deeply humiliated and angry. Chapter 2073. Yu Fu was the martial arts master of the Baishuang Empire, a respected ancestor. Being demoted from a deputy commander to a minor official in the imperial household department was a great humiliation, and he could not accept it. In order to preserve what little face he had left, he would rather resign from his position and return to the sect to retire. Lu Baishuang understood his feelings, so she did not blame him and nodded in agreement. Then, Yu Fu staggered and left, his figure disappearing into the night sky. After Yu Fu left, Lu Baishuang retracted her gaze and announced, "From today onwards, young Master Ji Tianqing will take over the position of deputy commander and lead the three armies in battle. No one is allowed to disobey young Master Ji's orders, or this emperor will punish them severely. If anyone colludes and opposes young Master Ji's orders, they will be killed without mercy." The clear and cold voice spread throughout the entire Heavenly Lion Pass. The millions of soldiers heard it clearly, and their bodies trembled, their hearts filled with awe. Lu Baishuang then ordered the four generals behind her, "Let the soldiers disperse, do not slack off on defense. The four of you go and gather the construction team, repair the scout camp as soon as possible and restore it to its original state." The four generals hurriedly cupped their hands in obeisance and went to carry out their respective tasks. In the sky, only Lu Baishuang and Ji Tianqing were left. Lu Baishuang nodded to Ji Tianqing and smiled, "Young Master Ji, this emperor did not expect things to turn out like this. This emperor was negligent. Now that young Master Ji has turned the tables and won the hearts of the millions of soldiers, it is truly worthy of celebration. Young Master Ji, please come to the commander's palace and let this emperor hold a welcoming dinner for you." Ji Tianqing glanced at her and smiled, "There is no need for a welcoming dinner. My time is tight, let's get down to business first." Hearing the words "get down to business first," Lu Baishuang did not know why, but a strange feeling arose in her heart, and a trace of undetectable shyness flashed through her eyes. But she immediately threw away the thought in her mind, and maintained a dignified posture, nodding, "That is also good, young Master Ji, please." With that, she led the way and personally led Ji Tianqing to the commander's palace. Lu Baishuang's commander's palace was located at the summit of the western mountain. It was a magnificent main palace surrounded by 12 other palaces. The interior of the main palace was decorated in a grand and imposing manner, but it was not overly luxurious. After the two entered the commander's palace, they walked into the conference hall. They came before a huge sand table and began to discuss military affairs. This 30-meter-wide sandbox was very lifelike. It clearly showed the terrain and the deployment of the troops within 100,000 miles. Ji Tianqing stood in front of the sand table and stared at it intently, carefully observing every part of the terrain and defense. While he was observing, he also memorized all the terrain and defensive arrangements. He remembered everything clearly, from big checkpoints and barracks to small sentry posts and arrow towers. For an entire hour, his gaze never left the sand table. Lu Baishuang was very familiar with the sand table, so he didn't look at it too much. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing. Although she had only interacted with Ji Tianqing for 2 hours, she had already heard of him. She had also seen with her own eyes how he had turned the tables in a desperate situation and how high-spirited he was. In her eyes, Ji Tianqing was an enigmatic existence. She wanted to see through him. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Lu Baishuang was looking at Ji Tianqing absent-mindedly, thinking of other things. Ji Tianqing suddenly retracted his gaze and turned to look at her. He said in a playful tone, "Lu Baishuang, you've been staring at me for an hour. Haven't you seen enough? I heard that you're not married and don't have a Dao companion. Could it be that you have feelings for me?" Lu Baishuang suddenly came back to her senses. When she heard his flirtatious words, her beautiful face turned cold. She said with some shame and anger, "Young Master Ji, please conduct yourself with dignity and don't speak nonsense." Ji Tianqing immediately revealed a relieved smile. He nodded and said, "That's right. I was worried that you would be infatuated with me and secretly have a crush on me. After all, I already have a family." His tone was very calm and natural, without the slightest exaggeration. It was very true. Because of this, Lu Baishuang was even more embarrassed and angry. She couldn't help but ask, "Young Master Ji, when you talk to others, are you also so flirtatious and narcissistic? Do you know that this empress is the youngest saint emperor of the Luo River Divine Kingdom, and is also the empress who is admired by millions of men? Is this empress so unbearable in your eyes?" Ji Tianqing hurriedly shook his head. He looked at her from head to toe and said seriously, "With your talent and appearance, of course you're a rare beauty. However, my heart already belongs to someone. It's impossible for the two of us to be together. So, you should kill any thoughts of love as soon as possible. Otherwise, you'll be hurt and everyone will think that I'm a heartless man. I'll be so wronged." Lu Baishuang had always been dignified. She didn't show her emotions on her face, but she was still angered by Ji Tianqing's words. "You. Ji Tianqing. You're really narcissistic, arrogant, and shameless. Do you think this empress will like you? Don't think too highly of yourself. This empress doesn't like you at all." Ji Tianqing smiled again and patted his chest, "Then I'm relieved. This way, it won't affect our cooperation." Lu Baishuang was so angry that her chest rose and fell rapidly. She almost choked on her breath and couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. "Ji Tianqing, this empress is very regretful. If I knew you were like this, I wouldn't have agreed to let Granny Long bring you here." Ji Tianqing looked at her with a serious face and said in a serious tone, "Lu Baishuang, you're wrong. You're taking the lives of hundreds of millions of people as a joke. This is murder." Lu Baishuang was stunned and looked at him with a puzzled face. Ji Tianqing explained, "Because of your own emotions, you didn't let me come to Heavenly Lion Pass to help. This led to the fall of Heavenly Lion Pass, and hundreds of millions of people were massacred by the demon army. Tell me, aren't you the main culprit, the eternal sinner?" Lu Baishuang rolled her eyes again and held her forehead speechlessly. She smiled bitterly and said, "Ji Tianqing, I don't want to bicker with you. I admit defeat, okay? Now, I'll arrange a place for you to stay. You can stay here with peace of mind. Starting tomorrow, I'll send 2 deputy generals to be your assistants." Lu Baishuang couldn't stand him and didn't want to stay a moment longer. The empress, who had always been calm and dignified, was now in a mess. She didn't even have a dignified bearing. She was afraid that if she continued to pester him, she would be led into a ditch by Ji Tianqing and say something unbefitting of her status. Simply put, she was afraid that after being teased by Ji Tianqing a few times, she wouldn't be able to help but curse him or vomit blood. Who knew that when Ji Tianqing saw her turn to leave, He pulled her arm and said with a smile, "Why wait until tomorrow? Let's start tonight. I'm in a hurry, so you have to hurry." Lu Baishuang was stunned and stared at him with her eyes wide open. Her eyes were filled with shame and anger. Chapter 2074. Lu Baishuang was crying. Her clear and beautiful eyes were covered with a thin layer of mist. Ji Tianqing saw her like this and felt a little helpless. He smiled bitterly and said, "Lu Baishuang, what are you doing? I didn't bully you. I'm talking about proper business. It's a military mission. Are you getting the wrong idea?" "Humph." Lu Baishuang glared at him and said coldly, "Ji Tianqing, I have something to do in White Mountain City. I'll be back in 3 days. I'll leave Sky Lion Pass to you. You must guard it well. Don't mess up. If Sky Lion Pass is lost, I won't forgive you. I'll report you to the Divine Master." Lu Baishuang turned around and left angrily. She didn't care about Ji Tianqing's persuasion and left as if she was escaping. When Lu Baishuang's figure disappeared into the night, Ji Tianqing revealed a triumphant smile and muttered to himself, "I didn't expect the dignified Holy Emperor Baishuang to be so easy to tease. I didn't even use my strength and she ran away. That's good. If she's not in Sky Lion Pass, I can control the situation and carry out the plan as soon as possible." Obviously, Ji Tianqing wouldn't tease Holy Emperor Baishuang for no reason. Of course, there was a conspiracy. He had heard from Granny Long that Holy Emperor Baishuang was the youngest martial saint in the divine nation. She was still an unmarried girl. Because Lu Baishuang was too young, she had to pretend to be cold and dignified. She was also more mature and didn't dare to be too aggressive. He and Lu Baishuang had different views. If Lu Baishuang stayed in Sky Lion Pass, she would be in a stalemate with him and waste time. This time, he had to cut the Gordian knot and end the battle quickly. Only after Lu Baishuang left in anger could he go all out. Soon, the meeting hall quieted down. Ji Tianqing stared at the battle sand table and carefully observed it. At the same time, he was thinking about the next plan. One battle plan after another, bold ideas kept popping up in his mind. After leaving the commander's palace, Lu Baishuang left Sky Lion Pass with 2 maids. The 3 of them stepped on a white cloud and sped through the night sky toward White Mountain City. Lu Baishuang stood on top of the cloud, looking at the night sky with a complicated expression. Sometimes she frowned, sometimes she was angry, and sometimes she was annoyed and regretful. The 2 maids behind her were both at the 8th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. They wore golden armor and looked heroic. The maid on the left hesitated for a moment before asking, "Lord Saint Emperor, are you really going to leave the Heavenly Lion Pass and hand over the power to Ji Tianqing?" He had just arrived at the Heavenly Lion Pass and had yet to figure out the situation. He was also not familiar with the situation of the 3 million strong army. "In 3 days, I'm afraid he won't even be able to remember the names of the generals, and then something will happen." Lu Baishuang was actually very regretful. He felt that his approach was too immature. However, at that time, Ji Tianqing had poked at her heart, and she had also been ridiculed and teased. This had made her flustered for a moment, and she had made this absurd decision. However, now that she had calmed down, even if she wanted to return to the Heavenly Lion Pass, she could not muster the courage to do so. "What do you know? Ji Tianqing is the most valued disciple of the Divine Master. His strength and talent are outstanding, and he is also the famous white-clothed killing god. He can definitely guard the Heavenly Lion Pass. Moreover, I have already instructed the great generals to take control of the situation. Even if Ji Tianqing sleeps in the Heavenly Lion Pass for 3 days, nothing will happen." The 2 maids in golden armor nodded, and they were relieved. The maid on the right asked again, "Lord Saint Emperor, I saw that you were unhappy just now, and you seem to have something on your mind. Is it because of Ji Tianqing? Lu Baishuang, of course, flatly denied it. He said with a dignified expression, "How is that possible? I have only met him once, and I have not even spoken a few words to him. How can I be angry with him? Don't ask any more questions. I am thinking about a serious matter." "Oh." The two maids replied and looked at each other. They did not believe this statement. They were Lu Baishuang's personal bodyguards and trusted maids. They had seen Lu Baishuang and Ji Tianqing enter the conference hall and stay there for an hour. Finally, Lu Baishuang rushed out angrily, and the corners of his eyes were still wet, as if he had been bullied. However, Lu Baishuang refused to admit it, and the two maids did not dare to ask more. They could only secretly gossip and guess. Could it be that Ji Tianqing bullied Lord Saint Emperor? Ji Tianqing is so arrogant that he does not put Lord Saint Emperor in his eyes. It is very possible. Damn stinky men, none of them are good. Seeing that our Lord Saint Emperor is beautiful, he must have evil thoughts. That's right. Unfortunately, his identity is noble. Lord Saint Emperor has to consider the overall situation, and for the peace of the empire, she can only swallow his anger. Sigh. Lord Saint Emperor is so pitiful. She has been obsessed with martial arts all her life, and has worried so much for the people of the empire. She has not even met the person she likes, and she has already been taken advantage of by a lecher. However, I think that Ji Tianqing is handsome and strong. He is also the #1 God's disciple in the empire. If he really did that with our Lord Saint Emperor, it would be a good match, right? The two maids discussed secretly via voice transmission. After letting their imaginations run wild for a while, they were filled with emotions and had complicated feelings. Achoo! Ji Tianqing was observing the sand table and thinking about the battle plan when he suddenly sneezed. He did not raise his head and rubbed the tip of his nose, and muttered to himself, "She must be scolding me behind my back." Sigh. Women really can't be offended. At this moment, two middle-aged generals strode into the hall with their heads held high. These two generals were the old subordinates of the Right Deputy Marshal, and were second only to the Deputy Marshal. They each led an army of 200,000 soldiers. The two of them came behind Ji Tianqing and bowed respectfully. "General Xia Wen, Zhonglin, greets Marshal Ji." Xia Wen and Zhonglin were the two deputies that Lu Baishuang had mentioned, and they had always been loyal to her. Ji Tianqing nodded and responded. "The two of you are the deputies that Lu Baishuang arranged for me, right?" Xia Wen cupped his hands and replied, "Yes." "Marshal Ji, since you're new here, let this subordinate give you a brief overview of the defensive arrangements." Ji Tianqing did not answer, but asked instead, "This sand table is updated daily, right?" Zhonglin nodded and said, "That's right." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "If that's the case, then you don't have to explain. I know the situation around the Heavenly Lion Pass like the back of my hand." Ah! Xia Wen and Zhonglin looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with shock. It had only been an hour. Deputy Marshal Ji had just arrived, and he did not ask anything. He only looked at the sand table for a while, and he already knew the situation. He was simply a god. While the two generals were still in a daze, Ji Tianqing ordered in a dignified tone, "Xia Wen, Zhonglin, listen up. Immediately gather 50,000 elite soldiers at the valley at the foot of the mountain on the east side." The two of them subconsciously straightened their bodies and listened to the order respectfully. After listening, the two of them frowned and could not help but ask, "Marshal Ji, why are you gathering 50,000 soldiers now?" Chapter 2075. Xia Wen and Zhonglin didn't understand what Ji Tianqing meant. Ji Tianqing glanced at them and said indifferently, there are 80,000 demon elites on the Cleaving mountain outside the pass. That's a fortress that can be attacked and defended. It's also the Fong of the demon army. I'll go and pull out that Fong tonight. First, I'll raise the morale of the soldiers and give the demon army a warning. He said it casually, but when Xie Wen and Zhong Lin heard it, they were dumbfounded. Their eyes widened in shock. After they came back to their senses, they waved their hands and tried to persuade Ji Tianqing. Commander Ji, you can't do this. The Cleaving Mountain is the outpost of the demon army. There's a saint-level demon formation and 4 great demon kings guarding it. Deputy Commander, you once led a team to attack it, but they failed and suffered heavy casualties. Left Deputy Commander Yu Fu had also led troops to attack once, but he had also suffered a crushing defeat and had lost 60,000 soldiers. The demon army has set up an inescapable net there. Once they rush to the Cleaving Mountain, they won't be able to return. Ji Tianqing looked at them expressionlessly. He frowned and asked, "It seems that you two are scared out of your wits? Just 80,000 demons scared you like this? How are you going to deal with the millions of demon army in the future?" Xie Wen and Zhong Lin could only smile bitterly and continue to explain, "Commander Ji, it's not that we're scared. We can't make unnecessary sacrifices. Everyone knows that once we take down the Cleaving Mountain, the demon army will be easily divided and broken. The demon army also knows this. That's why they've invested a lot in the Cleaving Mountain. It's impregnable. Commander Ji, I'm going a bit overboard. You've just been appointed and you want to take the risk to attack the most difficult Cleaving Mountain. This is definitely a taboo. Once you fail, the morale will drop and the army will be unstable. It'll affect your prestige." The two tried to persuade him, but Ji Tianqing ignored them. He waved his hand and ordered, "You don't need to say more. I've made up my mind. You just need to follow my orders." Xie Wen and Zhong Lin's faces were filled with helplessness. They could only look at each other and smile bitterly. Sigh. Just as Lord Saint Emperor expected, Ji Tianqing really doesn't play by the rules. Before Lord Saint Emperor left, he warned us not to let him do as he pleased. I didn't expect him to cause trouble so soon. What should we do? Should we inform the Saint Emperor? What else can we do? He could only report the truth to the Saint Emperor. Otherwise, who would dare to take on this responsibility? The two of them discussed secretly for a while and then excused themselves from Ji Tianqing and left the conference hall. On the other side, Lu Baishuang was speeding through the night sky. Suddenly, a stream of light flew over from afar and landed in her palm. When the light dissipated, a communication jade slip was revealed in his palm. Lu Baishuang quickly released his divine sense, invaded the jade slip, and read the information inside. When she finished reading the information in the jade slip, her expression changed and she frowned. Damn you! The moment this emperor left, he immediately became restless. Humph! This bastard, he must have deliberately angered this emperor to leave. How smart was Lu Baishuang? After leaving Sky Lion Pass in a fit of pique, she always felt that something was wrong. Now that Ji Tianqing wanted to stir up trouble, she immediately guessed Ji Tianqing's conspiracy. The two golden armored maids saw her strange expression and asked with concern, "Lord Saint Emperor, what happened?" Lu Baishuang said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, that brat, gathered 50,000 soldiers overnight to attack Cleaving Mountain. He said it was to raise the morale of the soldiers and give the demons a warning." The two maids also changed their expressions. One of them shook her head and said, "This guy is too unreliable. Everyone knows that Cleaving Mountain is a fortress and also the outpost of the demons' camp. Its defense is very strong. The two deputy commanders have personally led troops to attack it, but they all failed." The other maid also quickly persuaded, "Lord Saint Emperor, in my opinion, let's go back to Sky Lion Pass. If you are not here, with Ji Tianqing's temper, he will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Lu Baishuang was a little hesitant. After thinking for a while, she said, "No need, let's go back to White Mountain City. As the saying goes, don't doubt people you use, and don't use people you doubt. Since this emperor has chosen to believe him, I will give him a chance to prove himself. Moreover, he is a person that Granny Long and the Divine Master think highly of. He should not be so shallow." Seeing that Lu Baishuang had made up her mind, the two maids could not say more. They could only keep silent. The night was dark and the wind was strong. It was cold and the ground was frozen. At the foot of the mountain on the east side of Sky Lion Pass, in a dark and cold valley, a total of 50,000 black-armored human warriors gathered in the valley in silence, standing in a neat formation. No one made any noise. Only the armor and swords reflected the cold light from time to time. Ji Tianqing, Xia Wen, and Zhong Lin stood in the night sky, looking down at the 50,000 soldiers. Ji Tianqing nodded to show his satisfaction with the soldiers' condition. After all, this was the front line of the northern battlefield. The army was strictly governed, and military orders were like mountains. Ji Tianqing took out 20 mysterious talismans from his interspatial ring and gave them to Xia Wen and Zhong Lin. "Go and distribute these talismans to the 10 commanders. Give each of them 2 talismans." Xia Wen and Zhong Lin took the 20 talismans and looked at them with puzzlement. 10 of the talismans were golden, and the other 10 were red. They had different effects and functions, but they all contained powerful energy waves. Xia Wen was puzzled and asked, "Marshal Ji, what are these talismans for?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with a serious face, "Of course they are very useful. Whether or not we can achieve our goal tonight will depend on these talismans." Then, he waved his hand and ordered, "Pass down my order. Everyone, move out. Be sure to hide your swords and weapons well. Hide your figures and auras well." Xia Wen and Zhong Lin did not dare to say anything. They hurried to pass down the order. Soon, Ji Tianqing and the 2 generals led the 50,000 soldiers out of the valley. Under the cover of the darkness, they sneaked out of the pass. Cleaving Mountain was outside of the Sky Lion Pass. 800 li to the northeast, it was a straight and steep mountain that was thousands of zhang high. There were valleys on both sides of the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, there was a natural cave that led to the back of the mountain. Behind the mountain was a flat valley. A camp of the demon race was stationed here. There were about 400,000 elite warriors. Cleaving Mountain was easy to defend and hard to attack. Furthermore, the demon race had spent a lot of money to set up a defense. It could be said that it was unbreakable. In addition, behind the Cleaving Mountain was a vanguard camp of the demon race. There were 400,000 demon warriors in it. Once the Cleaving Mountain was about to be lost, those 400,000 demon warriors would immediately take it back. Because of this, the left and right deputy marshals had personally led troops to attack, but none of them succeeded. At this time, it was the middle of the night. There were lights on the Cleaving Mountain. From the foot of the mountain to the top, there were dozens of watchtowers. All of them were guarded by demon warriors. Chapter 2076. There was no moon tonight, and even the stars were sparse in the sky. As time went by, the night sky became darker and darker. In the night sky around the Cleaving Mountain, gray clouds gathered silently, as if a storm was coming. The mountain was still peaceful, and no one noticed anything unusual. No one believed that the human warriors of the Sky Lion Pass had the guts to attack the Cleaving Mountain. After all, the 2 deputy commanders of the Sky Lion Pass had come to attack in person, but they both failed miserably. With the terrain and defensive power of the Cleaving Mountain, they weren't afraid of the human warriors' attack at all. No one realized that a crisis was approaching. Furthermore, no one saw Ji Tianqing, who was wearing a white robe and empty-handed, swaggering up the Cleaving mountain. He performed the secret technique of turbid sky, and his body and aura merged with the heaven and earth. Even if he passed by the powerful warriors of the demon race, no one could sense his existence. He acted alone, and arrived at the Cleaving mountain in just a few seconds. Xie Wen and Zhong Lin were on the way to the Cleaving mountain with 50,000 warriors. After a while, Ji Tianqing arrived at the checkpoint at the foot of the mountain. There were over 1,000 demon warriors guarding here, and over 3,000 elite warriors in the dark. It was impossible to attack by force. Ji Tianqing walked to a tall black stone tablet, and had to stop. In front of him was an invisible barrier, which was the defensive shield of the sacred level demon formation. Only the demon warriors could enter and leave. Once the alien warriors got close, they would activate the formation and be killed by the counterforce. Ji Tianqing performed the secret technique of the divine eye, and stared at the invisible formation for a long time. The invisible demon Dao formation turned into thousands of veins in his eyes, with monstrous demon power flowing in them. 15 minutes later, he suddenly showed a cold smile, and raised his eyebrows confidently. So it's the common dark shadow soul attack formation. It can distinguish between the demon race and the alien race based on the soul waves. If it's the demon race, the formation will let them through automatically. If it's the alien race, the formation will release the soul attack and kill the intruder on the spot. For ordinary warriors, the formation that involves the soul is the most difficult to break. Yu Fu and the deputy commander came to attack the Cleaving mountain, but they didn't have a chance to break the formation secretly. They could only lead the army to attack. Of course, they suffered a great loss. Ji Tianqing understood the reason, and silently performed the secret technique of turbid sky, hiding his soul waves. After a few breaths, his soul and aura was hidden. He didn't have any soul or soul, he was just like a cold stone. Swoosh! He took a step forward and smoothly passed through the great dark shadow soul assault array, entering the array. It didn't trigger the attack of the great array, nor did it make any noise. It didn't alarm any of the demon race. After all, the dark shadow soul assault grand formation would only attack outsiders with abnormal soul fluctuations. Items that did not have life or soul waves, such as rocks, clothes, rotten wood, and so on, would not trigger any attacks. Ji Tianqing had concealed his divine soul's aura and energy waves like a rock. Of course, the formation wouldn't attack him. Swoosh! 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 After entering the formation, Ji Tianqing was unimpeded and swaggered to the top of the mountain. Along the way, he had a clear understanding of the defense of the entire mountain, the strength and distribution of the demon race. After a while, he came to the top of the mountain. The flat top of the mountain had a radius of 50 miles. A demon camp was built. In the middle, there were more than a dozen solemn black palaces. Ji Tianqing transformed into heaven and earth. Although there was no trace to be found, he could see everything in this area clearly. He clearly saw that there were more than 60,000 demon warriors in the demon camp. Most of them were recuperating. In each black palace, there were a large number of primordial soul realm experts and a few tribulation realm experts. They were all generals of the demon race. What surprised him even more was that in the middle of the majestic palace, there were more than a dozen tribulation realm experts. The dozen or so tribulation transcending realm experts of the demon clan were discussing military affairs in the solemn conference hall. Sitting at the top were 4 experts of different sizes. Their strength had reached the 5th level of the tribulation realm and above. Ji Tianqing could immediately determine that they were the 4 demon monarchs. Ha ha ha. Just as I expected, I caused such a big commotion in the Heavenly Lion Pass today. It will definitely alarm the spies and scouts of the demon race. The 4 demon monarchs and demon generals must have learned of the changes in the Heavenly Lion Pass and are discussing how to deal with it. Ji Tianqing sneered inwardly as he silently approached the palace. He maintained his invisible state and hid the aura and waves of his divine soul. He swaggered into the meeting hall and sat on the God-fiend statue at the top. The 4 demon monarchs were sitting at his feet, but they did not notice him at all. They were still discussing military affairs with the demon generals. A demon monarch who looked like a bull and had 2 horns was grinning and saying, "Everyone, I have great news to tell you. I'm sure everyone has heard it, right? Today, a human expert came to the Heavenly Lion Pass and caused a big commotion. He even took away the position of deputy commander." The original left deputy commander Yu Fu was removed from his position in public by Holy Emperor Bai Shuang. He could not bear the humiliation and ran away. Although the demon generals had already heard of this matter, they still roared with laughter. Ha ha ha. What a joke. Holy Emperor Bai Shuang has always been cautious. What's wrong with her brain? It's a big taboo to change the commander at the last minute. It will definitely affect the morale of the army. Moreover, that human expert who appeared out of nowhere is very young and unfamiliar. I also heard that the young man is extremely arrogant. Not only did he cause havoc in the Heavenly Lion Pass, he also injured more than 100 generals. He. That kid isn't our spy, is he? This is a good opportunity for us. Anyway, since such a thing happened in the Heavenly Lion Pass, it must be a mess now. The morale of the army is unstable. We have to take the opportunity to attack. The 4 demon monarchs and demon generals were mocking and ridiculing this matter. They regarded it as a big joke. At the same time, this was a heaven-sent opportunity for them. After everyone laughed for a while, the leader of the demon monarch said, "Everyone, this is indeed an unexpected surprise. It's the best opportunity for us to break through the Heavenly Lion Pass. However, Holy Emperor Bai Shuang has always been cautious. She actually removed Yu Fu and changed the commander at the last minute. I'm afraid there's a trap. I will send elite scouts to the Heavenly Lion Pass to find out more information. Once we confirm that the news is true and that the Heavenly Lion Pass is really in chaos, we have to send troops immediately. We can't delay any longer." Another demon monarch nodded in agreement. Demon monarch and gang is right. He has already sent scouts to investigate. What we have to do is to mobilize the army as soon as possible and be on standby at any time. We have to prepare to give the Heavenly Lion Pass a thunderous blow. When the demon generals heard this, they all rubbed their fists and their blood boiled. Ji Tianqing secretly sneered. You only think of attacking the Heavenly Lion Pass now? It's too late. Chapter 2077. Swoosh. The terrifying divine power of heaven and earth turned into an invisible palm and suddenly grabbed the head of a demon monarch. This demon monarch's strength had reached the 6th level of the crossing calamity realm. However, he did not notice the invisible giant palm at all. Crack. With a crisp cracking sound, this demon monarch's head was crushed on the spot. His flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and his brains splattered all over the ground. Even his soul was crushed, and he died on the spot. The other 3 demon monarchs and more than a dozen demon generals were happily discussing the matter of dispatching troops. The sudden turn of events caused the hall to fall silent. Everyone was stunned. Everyone stared at the headless corpse of the demon monarch in horror and slowly fell to the ground. The air seemed to have frozen. Everyone forgot to breathe. Their hearts were filled with shock and confusion. After a while, everyone came back to their senses. Suddenly, they burst into an uproar and exclaimed. Damn it! How could this be? The demon monarch has been fine. Why did his head suddenly burst? Someone must have attacked him. Everyone, search and find the assassin. It's impossible. We were all sitting in the main hall. Not to mention that we did not see the attacker, there was not even a trace of danger. More than a dozen demon generals were in a panic. They took out their swords and sabers and looked around for the assassin. The three demon monarchs' faces were very ugly. They also released their divine senses to cover the entire Cleaving mountain to investigate the abnormal situation and aura. Ji Tianqing sat on the demon god statue and looked down at the main hall. Seeing everyone in a mess and panicking, he could not help but sneer. Although he was close at hand, no one discovered his existence. After a full 100 breaths, the three demon monarchs and more than a dozen demon generals still did not find anything. At this time, Demon Monarch and Gang said, "This matter is too strange. Everyone, please calm down. I have already checked the corpse and can confirm that someone attacked secretly. However, we did not find any trace of the assassin. This assassin's strength must be very powerful. That's why we can't find any traces. I and the two demon monarchs will sit here. Generals, quickly mobilize the scouts and search the entire Cleaving mountain." Hearing his words, the dozen or so demon generals looked at each other in dismay, revealing awkward expressions. Devil Monarch and Gang, isn't our Cleaving mountain protected by a saint-level formation? How could an assassin sneak in? If it was really done by an assassin, not only would he be able to break into the sacred array, he would also be able to kill the demon king silently. Wouldn't the assassin's strength be at the martial sage realm? Martial saints acting as assassins? The Heavenly Lion Pass only has 2 martial saints. One is Holy Emperor by Shuang and the other is Yu Fu. It's definitely not that trash Yu Fu. The only possibility is Holy Emperor by Shuang. She personally took action. Just as the crowd was discussing animatedly, Ji Tianqing silently made his move again. He once again manipulated the divine power of heaven and earth to form a formless fist aura, which he hurled toward the head of a demon monarch. The demon lord had long been on his guard. Sensing the approaching danger, he subconsciously moved 3 zhang away, instinctively avoiding the danger. However, his speed was too slow. Boom! There was another explosion and the demon lord's head exploded on the spot. It exploded like a watermelon, with purple blood and broken bones splattering everywhere. The demon lord's spiritual soul was also shattered into pieces, mixed with blood and flesh, and scattered on the floor of the main hall. The 2 demon generals who were closer to the demon lord were still stained with blood. They were so frightened that their faces turned pale and they hurriedly took a few steps back. In the next moment, the demon lord's headless corpse slowly fell to the ground with a plop sound. The 10 demon generals were dumbfounded. Their eyes were wide open and they were filled with fear. The 2 demon lords who were lucky enough to survive were already prepared. When Ji Tianqing made his move, they finally caught a glimpse of his aura. Although they could not see Ji Tianqing's figure, they could determine Ji Tianqing's position. The 2 of them let out a low roar and attacked Ji Tianqing together. "You are courting death. Show yourself." Demon Lord and Gang raised his fists and blasted out 2 blood-red fist auras. The other Demon Lord gripped his heavy sword and viciously slashed out a massive blade of black light. Ji Tianqing remained invisible. With a whoosh, he teleported out of the main hall and dodged the attacks of the 2 Demon Lords. The 2 massive fist auras and the blade of black light struck the walls of the conference hall at the same time. Rumble. The walls of the hall were blasted apart, sending countless shards of stone flying everywhere. The entire wall collapsed, and the conference hall was also on the verge of collapse. A muffled boom resounded through the night sky, immediately alarming countless patrolling guards. A large number of patrolling guards hurried to the conference hall as quickly as possible to investigate the situation. The palaces and barracks in all directions also lit up with lights, and there was a burst of noise. The two demon lords, having failed in their attack, rushed out of the conference hall and continued their search for Ji Tianqing. The 10-some demon generals also panicked. They all gripped their weapons and formed a circle with their backs against each other, guarding against Ji Tianqing's sudden attack. But all of this was futile. Ji Tianqing quickly attacked again. While a demon lord was searching the area, he used the same trick again. He used the divine power of heaven and earth to condense a massive sword and viciously slashed down. The demon lord sensed something amiss and promptly brandished his heavy sword to block. But with his weak strength, how could he block Ji Tianqing's attack? Boom! Crack! With a loud boom, he was cleaved in two by the invisible sword. The heavy sword in his hand was also sent flying. The third demon lord was also killed, leaving only demon lord and gang alive. Such a scene left demon monarch and gang horrified. He was infuriated to the point of madness. Who is it? Get out here for this lord. What kind of expert are you to hide in the dark and ambush? If you have the guts, show yourself and fight this lord for 300 rounds. Demon lord and gang brandished a treasured saber and roared in grief and indignation. The 10-some demon generals were scared out of their wits. They knew that the assassin's strength was extremely terrifying, so they did not dare to stay any longer. Swish! 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 They actually scattered and quickly fled the assembly hall, burrowing into the surrounding darkness. Ji Tianqing saw everything clearly. He used his ultimate move again and charged at demon lord and gang. Star-shattering fist. He suddenly appeared behind demon lord and gang. His fists blasted out resplendent silver starlight that enveloped demon lord and gang's figure. Demon lord and gang sensed the aura of death descend upon him and immediately felt his soul leave his body. His eyes revealed an intense look of despair. His body flashed with purple light as he donned a supreme-grade tribulation-level armor. He held a treasured saber with both hands and slashed at Ji Tianqing with all his might. Boom! Crack! With a thunderous boom, demon monarch and gang was sent flying. The armor shattered into countless fragments, mixed with flesh and blood, scattering into the ruins. The treasured saber was also sent flying, stabbing into a broken wall. Chapter 2078. The Cleaving Mountain was in chaos. In the middle of the night, the mountain was brightly lit. Fire was everywhere. Countless demon warriors in armor and holding swords were searching for assassins in a hurry. Many scouts flew into the sky and used secret techniques to search the entire Cleaving Mountain. Of course, the news that the 4 great demon kings were assassinated spread out in the camp. Dozens of generals were terrified. They hurriedly sent out messages asking for help. Tens of thousands of demons were in a mess. They were running around in the camp. There were even deserters. Ji Tianqing didn't stay idle. He was still in his invisible state, creating chaos on the Cleaving Mountain. Wherever there were many people, no matter if it was a mansion, a palace or a camp, he would release 2 of his secret techniques to smash it. All kinds of dazzling lights and shadows of spells smashed down with the power to destroy the heaven and earth, making loud rumbling noises. Along with the explosions, palaces and camps turned into ashes one after another in the blazing light and shadows. Groups of demon soldiers were smashed into pieces on the spot. They didn't even have whole corpses left. In a short time of 100 breaths, Ji Tianqing had killed more than 20,000 demon soldiers. The entire peak of the Cleaving Mountain had become a mess. There were broken walls, deep pits, and cracks everywhere. The remaining tens of thousands of demon soldiers were scared out of their wits. They roared and cursed angrily and helplessly. Unfortunately, they couldn't find Ji Tianqing. They had nowhere to vent their anger. They could only retreat and find a place to hide. Ji Tianqing calculated the time. Xie Wen and Zhong Lin were about to arrive at the Qifeng Mountain with 50,000 soldiers. Therefore, he flew to the mountain guarding formation at the foot of the mountain and started to break the formation. The Qifeng Mountain was in chaos. Tens of thousands of demon soldiers were scared out of their wits. No one came to stop him. Another 100 breaths passed. He broke the holy level formation and made several holes in the defensive light shield. Finally, Xie Wen and Zhong Lin arrived with 50,000 soldiers. Ji Tianqing was hiding in the night sky. He used his soul to communicate with Xie Wen, Zhong Lin and the 10 commanders. Soon, the two generals led the 50,000 soldiers through the 5 openings and into the mountain guarding formation. Originally, the soldiers were apprehensive and they feared the Qifeng Mountain from the bottom of their hearts. But when they saw that the Qifeng Mountain was in a mess, fire was everywhere, and the demons were running away in panic, their morale was immediately boosted. Xie Wen and Zhong Lin were filled with excitement as they led the 50,000 soldiers to kill the enemy from the foot of the mountain all the way to the peak. Normally, the demons were ferocious and valiant, and they were the least afraid of close combat. But tonight was different. More than 60,000 demon soldiers were in chaos, making it very difficult for them to organize an effective counterattack. Unexpectedly, they couldn't withstand the attacks of the human warriors, and were forced to retreat step by step, constantly retreating to the mountaintop. Ji Tianqing continued to cast spells in the dark, constantly bombarding the devil experts, causing the devil soldiers to be attacked from the front and rear, falling into a desperate situation. Many of the demon generals despaired. Knowing that they would not be able to escape death tonight, they resolved to die and led their remaining soldiers in a counterattack. They didn't hope to defeat the human soldiers. They just wanted to buy some time and wait for reinforcements to arrive. After all, they had already sent out a request for reinforcements. The army camp behind the Qifeng Mountain also sent out a large number of devil soldiers, and they were rushing over with the fastest speed to provide reinforcements. At the same time, Ji Tianqing also sent out a message inscribed Jade Slip back to Heavenly Lion Pass. The content of the message inscribed Jade Slip was a military order. He ordered the 200,000 fully equipped soldiers to rush to the Qifeng Mountain with the fastest speed to fight the devil army. In reality, before Ji Tianqing set out, he already had a detailed plan. He personally killed his way to the Qifeng Mountain, assassinated the 4 great demon monarchs, and destroyed the Saint-level mountain protecting formation. Xie Wen and Zhong Lin led the 50,000 soldiers to follow closely behind and launch a raid, and they would be able to capture the Qifeng Mountain in one fell swoop. But Ji Tianqing knew that the devil army camp behind the Qifeng Mountain would definitely send out reinforcements in the shortest amount of time. Therefore, he left a backup plan before he set out. He secretly gathered the 200,000 soldiers, prepared the army for war, and was ready to reinforce at any time. Now, everything was developing according to Ji Tianqing's plan. The time was finally ripe. Kill. Kill all the devils, don't leave a single one alive. Tonight, we must capture the Qifeng Mountain. Xie Wen and Zhong Lin, the 2 generals, led the soldiers to kill the enemy bravely, and their morale rose higher and higher. The shouts and roars of the 2 armies, the crisp sounds of weapons clashing, and the explosions of secret techniques reverberated on the Qifeng Mountain endlessly. After a short 15 minutes, the human soldiers captured the Qifeng Mountain. After this battle, the 80,000 devil soldiers were all slaughtered, and only a few thousand escaped from the Qifeng Mountain. Such a result was very rare, and it was a complete victory. Ji Tianqing alone killed more than 20,000 devils, including 4 great demon monarchs, 12 demon generals, and dozens of commanders. Such a battle record could be said to be shocking, and his military exploits were splendid. All the human soldiers who participated in this battle were in awe of Ji Tianqing, and they admired him very much. Of course, the human soldiers also suffered casualties. More than 8,000 people died in the battle, more than 7,000 were injured, and only 30,000 people could still fight. Ji Tianqing decisively ordered the 30,000 soldiers to defend the Cleaving mountain, and at the same time, he sent people to take care of the wounded. Just as the soldiers got into the defensive formation, a deafening battle cry came from the foot of the Cleaving mountain. A mighty blood-red flood arrived at the foot of the mountain with a strong murderous intent. That was the army camp behind the Cleaving mountain. It was the vanguard army sent to support, and there were more than 100,000 of them. The leader was a demon monarch, and there were more than a dozen strong warriors of the Jinshi realm under his command. The army came aggressively, and they rushed up the Cleaving mountain without caring about anything else. Soon, they crossed the protective formation of the mountain. The protective formation of the mountain would stop the alien races, but it was useless against the devils, and they could go in and out freely. Therefore, the army of 100,000 devils quickly climbed up the Cleaving mountain. When the human race soldiers guarding the mountain peak saw the demon race soldiers swarming in from all directions, they were immediately filled with worry and despair. They had just won the battle and captured the Cleaving mountain. However, the devil army came to support them, and they would be wiped out soon. Just as the soldiers were panicking, Ji Tianqing appeared. He turned into a golden giant hundreds of feet tall, and like a god of war, he rushed towards the devil army with a huge black sword. At the same time, a few huge creatures appeared behind him. Chirp! A huge strange fish that was thousands of feet long and covered in ice blue gave out a strange chirp. It flapped its wide wings, opened its bloody mouth, and spat out a monstrous icy blue flame towards the demon race army. After the menacing devil race army was enveloped by the icy blue flowing fire, they were immediately burned to ashes without leaving any bones behind. In the blink of an eye, more than 2,000 devil soldiers were killed. Roar! Suddenly, a huge black monster rushed out from the steep hillside. It opened its huge mouth and spat out golden flames, incinerating thousands of demon race soldiers. It swung its tail, and 10 miles of land collapsed, burying thousands of devils. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.